6:33 on Monday, August the 6th, and we're going to call the school committee meeting to order. We will start with our consent agenda, which includes our minutes from July 9th and then donations of 20 laptops. First of all, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, edits on the minutes or the laptops? Okay. Too bad Dave is not here, that we couldn't talk about it. And I don't know that there is anything specific about the laptops for us to
Just that
know?
it's the same program that we've been using.
Okay.
That David is in touch with, and travels either down to New London in Groton area
Okay.
or to Westover, and receives the donated laptops, which
Okay.
we bring here and then repurpose. And we were actually creating a lab with those donated laptops this year.
Okay. All right, thank you. Just a quick question because I could not remember. Was everybody here on July 9th? Everybody was here? Okay, good.
Kathy says
All right.
yes.
All right.
That
Just
seems
checking.
so long ago.
All right, yeah, I know. All right, so we're all
Oh,
good
that's
then.
the one that went to 10:30. That's the
Yes.
meeting that went to 10:30.
Yeah,
Yep, sure was.
that was our good meeting.
Because we were getting ready to leave for vacation.
Yeah. All right, so we have the motions. If there is no other comments, edits, all in favor to approve the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. No visitors. We'll jump into new business. Permission for the superintendent to award bids during the summer.
So the school committee takes a vote every year to allow the superintendent to award bids. That's about it.
Since this is into August already, are you expecting bids to come in?
Are we expecting any bids to come in? I don't think so, actually.
Okay. So the other thing is, you're right that this is our standing approach to it. I don't remember what the threshold was before, we said we should discuss it with the school committee. Since you said that there is really no urgency, can we find
Yeah.
out what that is?
Yes, we can.
Do you still want us to vote on this?
believe-
It was 50,000?
I think it was 50,000, but I don't want to speak out of turn, but yes,
Alright.
we will check and get back to you.
Yeah.
We're not expecting any, so. And,
Okay, but you still want this vote?
today, no, we can wait until.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to you. All right, next we have volleyball.
I'm not quite sure what's going on up there.
Oh, you were gonna project something?
Well, not
Is
for
there a
this one.
remote?
Yep. It's probably under lock and key. Okay. I don't need it for that. Do you need to set up here?
Yeah, please, come and join us.
Right here?
Yeah.
Yes, right there. Well, you don't have to just face
Actually,
me.
Ally,
You can just,
I was like, she is wow. Feels so special, Henry.
I know. I was gonna say, I should have brought my lights and everything to complete interrogation.
I want to hear any comments on the back of my hair. I was just talking to the lady from Porter, who is the volleyball rep for equipment, and we were just talking about your hair frizz. And I asked her if it was 99 degrees in Illinois today, and we were joking about it. She left the house normal, she said, and as soon as she got to work, it was like.
Yeah.
But anywho.
Yeah, 99
It was a good
degrees.
laugh.
They have thunderstorms, major thunderstorms, and a
Yes.
tornado watch or warning, something.
Yes, they're
Yeah.
busy over there.
Yeah.
Okay, so right, girls JV volleyball. So the last couple years in the school, through conversations with the kids, and the kids have come to me on multiple occasions asking for girls volleyball. We haven't really heard that, from the boys, but the girls are interested. And I keep saying, we don't have enough interest. If somebody asks us to co-op, then maybe we can go that route. We do have interest now. We had probably about 9 or 10 right now, interested in the sport. So with that comes, uniforms, membership with the MIA and the PVIAC, which they would be recognized by. A lot of schools in the area have volleyball. I feel like we're one of the only ones that kind of don't. There's definitely a lot of interest and a lot of support within the community and beyond the community for us to jump on board. I couldn't believe the support that when I threw it out there to some ADs, like, can we talk about this? Like, teach me, I have no clue about volleyball. And they were super helpful, and everybody was very supportive, and like, you can do this, you can start this up. The cost is, there's a little bit of upfront cost associated with it, but I think through fundraising we can definitely offset the cost if we are creative, which we're on board to do. It would be open to students 7 through 12. It would be a JV sport for 2 years. You cannot become a varsity sport unless you put 2 years in before, prior to jumping on board with a league schedule. After the 2 years, you become part of the PVIAC, which we be part of anyways, but now we have 2 games per school, and you belong to a league. So we'd be playing schools that are comparable size to us, like our other teams. Some we have some Division 3, some Division 4. We obviously would probably go Division 4 based on the size of our school. The sport is played in the fall.
So it will start as school starts?
Yeah, it would start at when school starts, August 23rd. That's preseason date for athletes across the state. Well, football goes back a week earlier than the rest. And I feel like in general it just provides opportunity for those students that haven't had the opportunity before. It reaches a different student athlete, the ones that are athletes, but smaller schools don't have some of these programs because of the size. We're very soccer happy here. If we're a lot of our athletes, we have 35 plus signed up for both soccer boys and girls, and cross country numbers last year were through the roof. So I feel like it's just another sport that will grow over time, and I know through talking with some of the students in the past month or so that they are so excited. And it's definitely different for Granby, but again, with the community support, I feel like the program can only go up from here.
Questions?
So what happens if in a couple of years you just don't have that same interest anymore?
Right. So in a couple years, and we were just talking about that, the opportunity for co-op, right? So you can be asked to co-op with another school. I wouldn't want to do that. I would definitely put in full effort and grow the sport in general here at the school. And like I said, I think 7 through 12 helps too. And once they see, people are coming out and playing, I think it'll grow. And it'll grow even more. So at the end of 2 years, yes, it could fold. It totally could. We could say, you know what, we're just going to stay JV until we get more interest. But any of our sports programs, I feel like, are strong here anyways. So it'd just be another opportunity for kids. And once they see that we're playing volleyball, the kids would jump on board. My next concern would be boys volleyball. I wouldn't be worried about folding a girls volleyball. I'd be worried about the boys being like, oh, now can we have one?
Is there any co-ed teams now?
Right, so then there's rules around that. I mean, you could stack up your team with we're joking about that, with boys, but you were only allowed like one student. I said, like, you could put a Tanner Emilio out there and he would, destroy everybody, but you can't stack your whole team with boys. So you would be able to rotate one boy in. So boys, because we don't have the boys program, would be able to play on the girls team. But being mindful of their size. We don't want a boy up against a 7th grade girl. That'd be a little intimidating. But as of right now, the only interest that I've received has been from girls.
Now, does it matter if it's 7 through 12? Like, if you end up having a bunch of seniors that are gonna be playing JV against 7th and 8th grade girls, doesn't
No.
matter?
No, because you're SADA as a new program.
Okay.
And in the athletic world, everyone's pretty honest about their teams, and a lot of people that have reached out, you know, have shared. We have a freshman team, so our schedule will be based on pretty much playing freshmen in other schools. Because a lot of schools have 3 teams. They have a JVA, a B. Some of the bigger schools have, you know, their freshman team. They have many different levels. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, I was just curious as to what would happen if,
Yeah.
you know, two or 3 years from now, that just wasn't the same interest, that most of
Right.
your interest was from kids that were gonna be graduating.
So I feel like my experience with that too, being golf, you know, we had a crew where we had a lot of golfers, and the golfers were great, and then they all graduated. And we had like one golfer left, and he's doing a great job, you know, but that was our opportunity for a co-op to keep
Okay.
the program going.
So, these students were not playing any other sport before?
No.
So
No,
these
we
are
have,
brand new?
yep, and I feel like some of the crowd and some of our other coaches were worried about, you know, some of the players leaving soccer to go. Just recently, I think like one day one soccer player had interest, you know, in playing volleyball. But I feel like this student would have more opportunity playing volleyball than playing soccer anyways.
Okay. How about cross country?
No.
No?
Nope,
Would they overlap? Can you play more than one sport at a
No.
time?
nope, you can only be committed on one roster.
So the students that signed up for volleyball are not,
Students that are coming from other sports.
No, with the exception of that one email I got yesterday, just inquiring about it. But no, that was the biggest concern from our varsity coaches is this going to take from other programs? But it's not. It's a different crowd that you're pulling from.
that's good, it sounds like
It
we're
is.
filling in some other gaps.
What is the what is the cost that you mentioned?
As for what?
Cost.
In general? So it's $40 to belong to the PVIAC.
Per player?
Nope, total.
Oh.
And that's just a membership fee. There's equipment fee. The volleyballs I think ran me less than $500 for volleyballs. They have to get certain volleyballs. Learned all about that. And you have to have competition nets. We did receive poles donated from another school, from Minnechaug, when they built their new facility. So we have competition poles. That's what I was just on the phone with, trying to figure out what we would need and if it makes more sense to buy a system. We can't just use the portables that we have in there, although it would be great. I'm learning that there's a lot more to it, you know, so we'd have to purchase a net and possibly some parts to go with it. So I want to see the poles. We have to put some holes in the court, which is kind of scary to think about. They're going to drill some holes in the basketball court, but you got to do what you got to do. They cover them up, and we'll go from there and see what we actually need. She said that the lady I spoke to was very helpful. She said she'd do the best that she can.
Okay.
So I
We're
sent
gonna
her.
do it here?
What?
We're gonna do it in this
Yeah.
gym here?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's already lined, so there's no cost. Oh, and uniforms. We needed those, but
Alright.
we went with some uniforms, and I got some pretty basic ones.
So we already have uniforms for free? Or we would
Well,
buy
we
'em?
could. We could. I
Okay.
got some quotes from Soccer City.
Okay. And how much are you anticipating that would be?
Less than 600. And the good thing is too, I feel like you can go with a JV set and after 2 years if you want to purchase a varsity. So we just got, you know, I feel like they were blue, and we have to get a libero, which is like the person who wears a different colored shirt on the court. I learned all about that. So we had to get 2 of those.
Okay. So you have to get 2 sets?
Nope, one
No,
set.
just one set?
One
Okay.
set.
How many kids on a team can you have on the roster?
Yeah, I asked that question too. You can have up to 18. I mean, but you only put 5 or 6 out there at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So as of right now, with 10, I think that's
There's no minimum? I mean, you need
No.
your 6, but
right. No, and a couple subs. So I would probably say 8, but I don't know that for a fact. what the
Okay.
minimum would be.
Because in some sports, I may be thinking of college sports, they actually ask that you have a second team, basically. I don't know if it applies to high schools. It would be good to know before we.
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like, you know, it's out there on social media. I feel like kids are talking about it. But when registration comes, I think you would know more.
All
You
right.
know? And we still have some flexibility because you don't have to commit a roster until, and it's JV, so it's pretty flexible. If it was varsity, it's a different story. But you don't have to commit a roster until like good 3 or 4 weeks into the season.
Okay. How about the coach?
Yes, we have to post for a coach.
Okay. And how much do you think that will be?
A basic first level JV coach is $18.36. It's a stipend of $18.36.
How many games? 15, I think I saw in that.
So as of right now, there's 15 schools willing to commit. And there's schools of all different sizes. So some of the schools have freshman teams and some they're just JV games. So we won't be playing like the varsity A at West Springfield High School. We'd be playing the freshman team from Westfield High School, which would be all 9th graders.
So it sounds like it's somewhere in the vicinity of $3,000.
Yep. And again, I feel like since I jumped on board in athletics anyways, we've been doing a lot of fundraisers to help offset things. And with the silent auction, you know, I think that would be, I'm really hoping to bring in a good profit from that silent auction. And I know our majority of the money and the funds would be going to a scoreboard, but I feel like we have the kids and the coaches are all willing to help. And the relationship we have with the PTO and the booster, I feel like our relationship has grown so much that if we do a spaghetti dinner, or if the PD, the police department helps us do the golf tournament that we didn't do it last year, but we usually bring in a good amount of money from that. So there's definitely options to get creative to help offset the cost.
Well, I mean, I'm all for another sport. Yeah, I know that when my kids were in sports, the different teams were competing for funds. So I guess that's my only concern is it's another sport that's added where, you know, other teams are, you know, in need of new uniforms or field maintenance or whatever it is that, you know, we don't want to be doing anybody a disservice by thinning it out even more.
Right. I think we're pretty equitable across the board. Right now, last year was tough for us because we did a turnover of uniforms for a couple sports. So I feel like with having a consistent athletic director, I have a pretty good idea of who's up for what. I know wrestling's on board, so things like that. I think I got a good pulse on who's in need of what, you know, and I feel like the coaches are pretty honest too. That if they know they can go without 10 dozen baseballs, we cut and only get 8 or something like that. But I feel like we're pretty good in regards to knowing who needs what.
Is there still a user fee for sports?
There is. There definitely is. User fees pay for officials. It's super important because the
Oh,
cost.
that's it? How much is that? User fee?
User fees. Well, it's $150 and there's a tiered, so it is a reduced amount if you have more than one child.
So that will only cover the referees?
No, there's more. It's referees. Adam, what else is it? Is it busing, transportation, officials, and when you make playoffs, that's hard to budget for too because at the end of the year you don't know who's making playoffs or not.
Well, JV wouldn't that wouldn't be
Right.
for this one. It would
Yep.
be for the next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I like volleyball, so I'm excited to see that.
You cannot play, Emery.
Yeah, it's nice to have a sport that students who did not get a chance to do sports before can jump into. This whole thing is good information. Thank you. I had a conversation with Cheryl, so I'll bring the process part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Typically and normally, we would hear about this way before, so we can ask these questions and talk about the budget impact and whether or not, we're going to be affecting the other sports and all that. And you, as the authority on those things, as the athletic director, would give us all the good information. We would have the discussion, then we would make a decision. Right now, it seems like we already have a lot of things in place, moving parts, and a lot of students are expecting that there will be a sport in the fall. So I think this is an example that we have to really create standards that should be fairly easy for us to pull the checklist and say, what are the things that we need to do before we decide to start a new sport. I don't know if you were here when we started lacrosse a few years ago.
Negative.
So with lacrosse, we had the parent petition. They came in and they explained why it would be important to have lacrosse. Then we talked about cost, and we talked about whether or not we were taken away from other sports, and we had to ask other coaches, just like you were. And we had to do all that legwork in advance of a decision. And by the time we came to the decision, we knew everything that we need to know. And there was a budget impact, and lacrosse is a much more expensive sport because of the equipment and all that. But we knew where the fees were going to be, which were much higher. I don't know where we are right now with lacrosse fees, but they were much higher than the others, and that was going to be partly, how we were going to meet the extra cost. Here, for instance, you're saying that you're hopeful you're going to get those, but we don't know for sure whether we're going to get. So, it's always good to discuss whether or not this is something we want, this is something that we can, this is something that we can afford, and all that. So with that, since looks like a lot of good work went into this, I personally will not be opposing this, obviously, but I just want to make sure that I just want to make sure that we talk about it here openly, so that next time we have something similar, it doesn't have to be a sport. That things that need to go through the circle goes through the circle.
Yeah,
before.
I feel like there was a lot of excitement around it, and I feel like, the wheels were kind of already, really quick in motion, and it was hard to kind of come back to it and then be like, oh yeah, process. So I respect that totally. And yes, I was not here for lacrosse, but if there is, a sport that comes up, swimming, we were just talking to see there's a process for all this.
I know.
And there's a behind the scene process too on the other side of things with the MIA and the PVIAC. There's a whole process over there too. So I totally respect that, and any additional sports or anything, that comes up will come forward on our new form.
All right.
So I'll make the motion to approve volleyball.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more questions, discussion? All right. All in favor to approve JV volleyball starting in fall 2018, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Allie.
Thank you.
How will they
Good.
know to, register for it? Because I know they have to come
Yeah,
in.
we can talk about that in a couple minutes.
Okay.
We're in the hot
We'll
seat
come
today.
back to that.
Oh, sit right down.
I have to do my other one.
Can we take a new business out of order just so that we can get Ally's?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do
yes,
that.
please.
Thank you.
Which one is Allie's?
So she would have also the
Oh, okay. Online
information.
payment?
Yep,
Okay.
for the online
Yep.
payment.
Got it. That's gonna be around 9 o'clock, Allie. So,
I was just telling the lady I haven't seen my kids all day.
And
They were still asleep.
if you would allow us, like volleyball, we have another sport edition, although there's no cost. So it probably requires a vote. It's for unified basketball to be added, and it's through the Special Olympics. It's no cost to us, but Ally has a presentation on that as well.
today?
It's not on the agenda.
Okay.
If this committee would hear it and consider it, because registration needs to happen
We would hear it and consider it.
soon. Okay.
Right, and I think that it's not, the timeline isn't the same as
Okay.
a
Oh, this is
preseason
what it is?
sport. And I just might need a clicker, and just kind of,
Oh, okay. I'll take my Vanna.
there's only just 2 links at the very bottom. So, Carol Hepworth, she's our Director of Pupil Services, and Patty Doherty is the lead person from the Special Olympics. So we met with them over in the spring, and they introduced to us a unified sports at Granby Junior Senior High School. So a lot of this is falling under the special ed umbrella, and I'm here because sports and the athletics department ties into it. So there is 2 separate programs and things going on that you should be aware of, and that I'll share with you. Carol Hepworth could probably speak more to the event that we're going to be hosting, a Special Olympics event here. It has been done in the past here. Last year was our first year not hosting. We had a changeover in advisor with our Hope Club, and the teacher who was doing it decided not to run it here and host it here. And so the Special Olympics came to us in the spring and said, hey, we'd really like you to do it again. And we were like, oh yeah, we had a new advisor. So we were like, okay, let's set up a meeting. So we met in the spring. They came to us, and we're on board to host in, I believe it was October. So there is a special ed event that is going to be occurring out here, the Special Olympics, with a lot of the surrounding schools. So that's a 1-day event. What you're looking at up here is the second part of this. Now, it's unified sports. And if you see under the background, Unified Sports Basketball Leagues is based upon successful Special Olympic programs using the principle and programs of Unified Champion School. So Granby would be a Unified Champion School. Okay? Now, we have not before. This is new for us. We could choose bocce, we could choose track and field, or we could choose basketball. And what happens is our students here are partnered with students with emotional intellectual disability, and they created one team. And that one team has a few practices under direct supervision from a coach, and they go and play other schools. They play like 4 or 5 games. So there's schools in the area, West Springfield High School, Quabog, Chicopee, they are champion schools. So we are now going to be a champion school. So people can come here and play us. Now, this wouldn't interfere with the winter basketball season. Actually, they do theirs where they start at the end of the fall and they finish before Thanksgiving. So it's a pretty quick season. What would happen is we would have some of our student athletes in the school, or anybody who was willing. They would partner up and team up with the team, and they would play basketball games, shortened games. They could play it here. They could travel to West Springfield High School and play their team there, their unified basketball team. So that's really what we have going on here. The sport will be played during the fall, recognized by the MIAA. That's their partnership, and with the Special Olympics. They play across Western Mass. We do receive a $2,000 grant for the first year. The second year, it's $1,000 per school, and then the third year is self-sustaining. The funds are limited to purchase, and you can see the checklist. I took that right from their application, just so you can see. We would not have to purchase anything because we already have jerseys and we have basketballs. What we would need to do is pay a stipend for a coach. So again, they're giving us $2,000, so we have that choice if we wanted to use the full 2 or if we wanted to break it up into a little bit. And
So you're saying that that's gonna be used for the coach
it
stipend?
totally could be. Yep.
Okay.
And
Yep.
to clarify the transportation piece,
The transportation, we could use the school van. So the school van we have the ability to bring kids to and from.
because I see an asterisk there, I was just curious about
Where are
Where
you
do
seeing
see
the asterisk?
under the transportation expenses to UCS.
Unified Sports. That could
Oh,
be.
that's a registered mark, yeah.
Yeah. Athletes with and without intellectual disabilities train alongside. So like I said, there's practices. It really is in general to promote inclusion of the school, you know, which in turn, like we don't have anything like that here. So I feel like we're gonna jump on board, you know, with this great program that has already well established in the state. And it gives us great opportunity. Now, along with this is, can you click the link, Cheryl? Go down under, yes, thank you. I just wanted to show you, there's a couple, if you scroll down a little bit, there is, okay, right here, where it says, there's your choices of what you can choose to do. Like I said, we could choose basketball, you could do track and field, or bocce. I personally, when I advised the student council at Quabog, we did bocce. It was an amazing event. I mean, you leave there and you're so appreciative and grateful for just the opportunities that all these kids have. The youth leadership tab has some programs that you can embed this with, so you can work with your student council, your best buddies program we don't have here, your National Honor Societies, your youth activation council. So we definitely have other avenues. And then the advocacy part in the whole school engagement are some of the things that you could do. The fans in the stands. So when we do go to West Springfield High School, if they're hosting an event similar to what we're having here, we could go there and we could bring a bus full of kids. And they could be fans in the stands. We could participate in the MSC SC Polar Plunge, which I've done personally a couple times in Hyannis, and it's freezing. They do them all over the place, but you can participate in it. I feel like we have some of our, I want to say cross-country kids and Hope kids that do it anyways.
They did a bunch of them did the leprechaun plunge at
Yes,
Brunel's.
yes. The school-wide End the R Word pledge, that's a campaign that you can run throughout your whole school, where you have a banner and the kids sign and they pledge not to use the R word. And obviously there's pep rally, where you can hold pep rally and, you know, recognize the student athletes in the Special Olympics as well.
That's awesome.
So they kind of, it's two different things going on, but this is like the part B that we never did. So we've always been doing A, and I feel like the two of them are just going to kind of fall into place. So there's an application that comes with it, and I wanted, you know, I brought it to Cheryl, and Carol is aware of it, and just say, like, they should probably be aware of this too. This is what we have coming. Now, it's not, it's recognized by the MIA. There's a certificate that comes with it, medals and t-shirts and things like that, but it's nothing where it's going to be playoffs at the end of the year or anything. It's more of, you know, full school events.
Is it a co-ed team?
It can be, yes, in grades of students 7 through 12. And there's a possibility of even, depending on the age of some of the other schools that we would be playing, to have kids younger. So if Hopkins had one, I think they're 6 through 12, you could do 6 through 12 as well.
That's really neat.
Yep,
Good
and
idea.
our event here is going to be K through 12. So it's going to be
Oh.
a pretty big event here.
That's the Special Olympics
That
events?
is,
Okay.
yep.
When is that?
I want to say it's October 11th, rain date the 12th. We're just in our infancy stages. We had a meeting a few weeks ago with some of the key players in that, just to make sure we have our ducks in a row for that event.
Any questions for Ally?
Well, I guess it's not a question, more of just something that we need to keep in mind that
The second year, we're more financially responsible, and then the third year, we're self-sustained.
That was actually one of my questions, is I don't see $2,000 being enough to cover the expenses if you have to pay coach a stipend, right? Wasn't that
So
like-
depending on what the coach stipend is, I feel like we have the opportunity to set that too. I mean, their season isn't as long as a typical season of soccer, or it could really be $500, or I'm just saying, I don't know what it would be. But like I said, a JV coach here gets $1,800, and that's from August 23rd until the first week of November. So I mean, that's a pretty big stretch of time, and their practices aren't every day. there's maybe 2 or 3 practices, and then maybe 3 or 4 games in total.
So, I don't know if this is covering your question as well. Do we think that for the first year, at least, for instance, what we're going to receive will mitigate the cost of this program?
Yeah, we should be all right.
Okay.
Because we, like I said, we have jerseys, we have old basketball jerseys, boxes of them. And
That was actually my questions. I'm not worried about next year and the year after, because if it's successful, we can always work at it in the budget, right?
Yes.
It's just this year we don't have it in the budget.
right,
Okay.
right. And we have the with the $2,000 is the most that we'll receive, and next year we'll have 1,000. So we'll really be looking at, we'll have the uniforms for next year too. We'll have the basketballs for next year. If we change the coach salary, that would be different, you know, but I wouldn't really anticipate using all of it. I think we could definitely be creative in regards to some of it. I don't even think they have officials. Not 100%.
Is there any plan for, like, I mean, we're talking about one coach, but for a whole team of special needs kids? Are we doing, is it parent volunteers that?
So they rely a lot on the students. So they
Okay.
pair up. That's my experience with bocce.
Okay.
Is we had 2 or 3 students per one student who had emotional or intellectual disability.
Amazing.
It was an amazing experience.
That's
I did it
awesome.
for 5 years.
Bocce sounds perfect.
It's fun.
Yeah, because there's just, yeah, it's just a different skill set.
And if we
Awesome.
wanted to, after a year, say, you know what, we're not going to do the basketball, we could try the bocce.
Yeah.
We could.
Cool.
And the Special Olympics, they're awesome. They provide you a lot of like the sets for bocce and things like that. So when Carol and I spoke with them, we inquired about, you know, what about some of these things, you know, that we would be responsible for purchasing, and she reassured you that really that 2,000 is a good start
Yeah.
for you to have.
Any questions?
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve the unified team? What do you call this program? Unified basketball team? Unified basketball program for the next couple of years, I guess, right?
It would be.
Yeah. So let's say starting winter, fall,
They would start probably
starting
right
in
after
2018. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right at the end of soccer season, they would probably start getting some practices in.
Make that
That's
motion.
good. Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Any more questions? Discussion? Yeah. Jen made the motion. Mike seconded. I like this a lot. I did not even realize that this year was skipped Special Olympics because it's always a great event. You know, whether everyone realizes or not, it's a school event, so everybody's out there on the fields
Right.
and working. So I'm glad that it's coming back, and I like this program. Hopefully, we can make it a permanent program. Thank you for that. All in favor to approve the program, please say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thanks.
You have one more thing, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, I brought you a copy of a letter that I wanted you to have. I made 10 copies.
Okay.
If you just wanted to pass it down.
We have to read it twice, or is that
No.
No. Okay.
Why is it double-sided? No.
Oh wait, there's a second side to it.
No,
Oh, okay.
not at all. It's from Karen Slozak, employee of the district.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Big font, I was able to
I
read.
know. I like the big font. So I had reached out to Karen Slozak and the other nurses because FamilyID is a new platform here at the school, and I reached out to her because I wanted to have like a testimonial of someone who has signed their child up using FamilyID. So FamilyID is an online platform used to register athletes across the state. Okay, when I say across the state, I mean it's everywhere. A lot of schools use it. I'm really excited about it because preparing for it, you have a stack of papers. And I'm not quite there yet, as a parent, but I'm sure, in a few years I'd be there filling out that stack of papers. But there's probably a good 8 papers. You filled the packets out multiple times. Times two,
Yes.
right? And the beauty about that is, with this platform, is it's innovative and efficient, where it takes that whole packet and it puts it in a digital format. So you create a parent account. So you create Deanne Rakowski, and you're signing your son up for wrestling. You create it one time. One time. You create this in the fall, right? And I know wrestling's in the winter, just saying. So you create your family account, Rakowski's, and you go in, you log in, you add child. If you have 5 kids, you add all 5. And then you have the options to sign up for football, cross country, girls JV volleyball. Okay, so you have that option to click and add to cart. You enter all the information, and the beautiful part about this is it saves it. And then it rolls over.
Oh.
So it rolls over. I'm really excited. It rolls over to the following year. Now, along with that are a lot of policies, aside from our forms, right? We have policies here at the school. There's the required hazing, chemical health, things that the students have to sign off on. Concussion, they have to watch these videos. There's a lot of things that go into it. And if you haven't signed your child up for a sport, then you probably don't have a clue as to what I'm talking about right now. But there's a lot that goes into it. So now they've digitalized it and made it into this super easy, user-friendly format. So now it requires student signature, parent signature, they're all electronic. So when you go through, you create your account, the kids sign off, you sign off, and now it's all there. And
So then when you wanna do another sport, say in the spring, the template is there and you just make the changes?
yes.
Oh my God.
If-
Yes,
If you need to upload Ben's new physical date, right, you can just hit the paperclip and upload the new physical. That stores all that information into a data sheet that all the coaches can have access to, because there's that emergency authorization, the white card we call it, that coaches are required. And I feel like I still want to give them the white card just so they can have a paper copy, but they do have access to it. I've asked if coaches can log in on their phone, if they can do those things. Coaches will have access to their roster and all the emergency contact information, so if something did happen at a game. But they also have, I'll give them a backup. But all that information is stored in one little hub, and you have it at your fingertips. It's at your disposal. You can set fields to alert you. So if Ben's physical is expiring and he needs a new one, I can set a field and send you an email, drop of a hat. I can filter it and get a list of everyone's physicals who are expiring 30 days from now, and send out a mass email to all the parents. So-and-so's physicals are expiring, you need to upload a new one.
So the information now on the medical forms, when that comes into you in paper form, that is not uploaded in the computer, it's in a paper
Correct.
file, right? So of course my first concern is protecting information, health information for students and
So who owns all that?
Right, so the 2 people, right, as of right now, the only 2 people that would have access is Nancy Jenks, right? Because Nancy and I have been working close together, she's our nurse leader. And we actually sat together as we went through everything and created the whole website with all the forms and everything. We went through it together. So nobody would have access to it unless they were given permission.
And the two
And-
people would be Nancy and you?
It's Nancy and I, as of right now. There's nobody else added on to that. And the only other last component that you would need to be aware of is that there's a secure platform for payment, for online payment. Okay? And the online payment is through My School Bucks. They also, I don't know if you've heard of Stripe or PayPal. schools
and
can,
my school bucks is how we would
Pay
pay
for
for
lunch.
lunches anyway.
right, right.
The lunch program, so.
Right, so there's a processing fee that's attached to that. The school has to make a decision if they're gonna pay that or not. We chose not to pay it. And so I feel like doing some research in all transparency, that was probably the biggest gripe that I heard, from other ADs. Is that there was an initial complaint about, oh, it's $3 for a processing fee. But I feel like you go to the ATM and you pull out money, it's $4 now.
Like each time they're charged a fee?
If you sign your child up for soccer, and then for wrestling, yes, there's a $3 fee that's attached to it, or whatever the fee is.
What if you change other information? I update
No.
physical information.
No.
So each time you sign up for a new sport,
When you
because
pay
you have
the
to
fee.
pay a user fee,
Just the fee.
you're charged
Yep.
this, okay.
So all the data, all the medical data, I'm sure you probably need names, addresses, all that
Yep.
personal data.
Yep.
Where's all that stored? Is it secure?
It's a secured platform.
So they have AWS Virtual Private Cloud, and it's all SSL, TSL security. It's the same as healthcare.
Yeah, I'm not a computer person, I just wanna make sure that
Yeah, it
it's
looks
stored
like
in
they
a place
follow the
that's safe.
same. They use the same security protocols that hospitals use. It's pretty secure.
Well, I'm not so sure that gives me warm and fuzzies.
It's very secure. It's the same as.
It's so
the
secure you can't
government.
even get into it sometimes.
It's
It's
pretty
that's
secure. Yeah.
So when Ally
Doesn't
first
get more
brought this
secure,
forward,
really.
we did talk about it at the leadership team,
Yeah.
and so David is on that team, obviously, and he did go through connectivity, safety and security, ease of use. We had some conversation about whether our current system would allow us to do the same things. So there was a lot of discussion at the leadership team regarding some of
It's
these
Amazon.
questions. So he sort of, he gave it the green light for us to move it forward.
So what's the cost of it to us?
I believe the total was 12. I want to say it was 1,200
One time?
in one time.
So that leads me to my other question is, there's gotta be a gain in this somewhere, right? All the time and paperwork that you're spending, collating all this information's gotta be a save somewhere, right?
Well, it's funny you asked that. Did you click my Earth Day at FamilyID?
You're asking that you're gonna be saving from
Time.
effort somewhere else?
At some point,
It's gonna,
You should bring that up again one more time because it's not clear to a lot of
Okay.
folks who are not used to really thinking about cost that way.
so all the time you're spending doing this manually now is gonna offset the cost of this for this year and probably save money in the future at some point, I would think.
I would say it's gonna save a lot of money in regards to photocopying,
Right.
Cut
alone.
people's time, right?
Right,
Oh,
in
so
time.
the time.
Yeah.
In time. I mean,
Yeah, a lot of people are working on taking the forms, making sure everything is on it, processing it, putting it somewhere, then finding it again if they need it for other purposes.
they fill it out 3 times a year.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
So
chasing me down when they find out I forgot to sign one piece of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't mess around. We
I think
highlight,
we need to
I
do
mean,
that
we
for
will,
the beginning of the year paperwork.
but all those
Yeah.
things, all that
Good.
data is saved.
That
Yeah.
is
It's all
stressful.
saved, and the coaches get what they need to. And the coaches have a separate, so maybe I should clarify that. So if I'm a coach and I log in, I won't have the same ability that the administrator, the site administrator would have, or the nurse leader would have.
They would only have access to their
Right,
roster.
so you can be specific when it comes to that. So I wouldn't give our boys soccer coach access to a lot of the private stuff. Just the things like the authorized pickup and allergies, things like that he has access to already. But I found that on here on FamilyID, and I just wanted to share that out, just because, and it can scroll down too. Sorry, Cheryl. Because I thought it was really cool to look at it, and I know the question
I was gonna be here
come.
all night, so.
It's just Happy Earth Day.
No, keep going.
Just kidding.
So, and I think about how many photocopies I make, and like if anyone needs a restriction in making photocopies, it would be me. Because I'm constantly photocopying and sending out, printing more packets, they lose their packets.
And each time there's an error on something, then you have to go back, there's rework and potentially just waste more paper and photocopying.
Just think of how much time it's gonna save you.
Mhm.
to put your time and energy into other things
Right, and
other
we-
than.
I feel like, the past couple years we've been doing registrations in one day, and the kids weren't used to it. And they were like, what's registry? Now they're trained to have like 1 day of registration. So the beauty of this is this can open up for 2 weeks. I've been on Twitter the last couple days, and it's starting to pop up where Gateway just posted FamilyID registrations open, for, because they use it too. And so you can see everyone starting to post their 2-week registration period, which allows parents to not sweat if they can't make registration day.
Good. All right, we need a vote on this?
Yes.
This is a new
I'll make
platform
the
that we're
motion.
putting in. Okay.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, discussion? All right, all in favor,
Aye.
to start
Aye.
Family ID platform?
Aye.
Okay, aye, please, thank you. Thank you.
Good?
You're good,
Go home?
Yep.
yes.
Go see your kids.
Thank you, Ally.
Bye, thank you.
Yeah, have a good evening.
Sure.
I think that's great.
Yeah, I like that. Although my favorite one was unified basketball team, I gotta be honest. I like
That's
that
pretty
idea.
cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I'm really excited about that. I want my kiddo to
Cool.
play.
All right, so going back into our new business,
go.
parent satisfaction survey results.
Yes, so I had put in your folder the results of the parent satisfaction survey school climate. I'm gonna find my right piece of paper. Here it is. So 83 parents responded, which actually is a good number. We hope for more, but it's a start. 27% were from West Street, 19% were from East Meadow, and 49.4% of respondents were from Granby Junior Senior High School. The topics included satisfaction with school facilities, academic support and rigor, extracurricular school offerings, school safety, communication, teacher support, and social emotional learning. In general, the leadership team will be using the data and the feedback, but also the comments to analyze our criteria for measuring our own success. So are we communicating effectively? Do students want to come to school? Do they feel safe at school? So we'll be looking at all of the data in detail. But in general, adequate facilities remains a concern for parents, particularly at Granby Junior Senior High School. Extracurricular offerings and after-school programming continues to be a concern, and in particular, expanded offerings at Granby Junior Senior High School, but limited offerings is the concern at East Meadow. So the idea that we need more offerings at East Meadow for students.
Do we know what that means?
Yeah.
So several of the comments reflected after-school programming like homework help that had been offered in the past. We had, under Dr. Houle, replaced that with our partnership with CES, which is after school 5 days a week,
Right.
which is different. And so I think what we're seeing in the feedback is the desire to return to maybe some shorter segments of after school, maybe some STEM or homework help, maybe 1 day a week or 2 days a week, is what the feedback, what the comment sections were about.
Versus every day, you mean?
Right, and the fee structure for participating in the CES after-school program. So they
Is that
wanted
the
more
SOAR
diversity. The SOAR, yeah. Yeah.
So SOAR was more structured around.
Yes,
I guess like after-school learning activities.
right.
And the parents are now asking for more, like, I want some help for my child.
Yeah.
with homework.
Yeah, homework
their
help,
pace.
yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Did we ever engage, I don't know, National Honor Society or students who wanted to have some experience as they're applying to colleges for tutoring and all that stuff? Are
I
they
think-
connected?
Not yet, but I think the feedback will help the leadership team think about that. Also, there's a civics engagement now requirement
Right.
for our students, so I think this is an excellent opportunity for our students to reach out, and we're one campus now, so I think we'll be able to develop some programming.
So this program that we're talking about now that currently exists, was based on feedback that we got, and that was the reason why it was implemented
Right.
in the first place, right? So just
So,
I just
and
need
I
to
think,
throw that
yeah.
out there that.
And I think that 5 days a week for families is important, but I think what we're hearing is, I don't think they envisioned losing the flexibility of a 1 day a week, a homework help, or some of the other types of after-school programs that were available at the time.
Now, is this something that can be redesigned through the current vendor? Or is it something that is gonna be redesigned altogether?
I think what we envision, in looking at the feedback is actually two, is to run homework help simultaneous to SOAR, and to, create perhaps, other smaller units of after school where kids, maybe have an interest, and we can group kids together and provide, a couple of weeks of, a gaming, club or things like that. The art club, I think, is a good example of an extracurricular activity that kids are really excited about. It happened once a week. It did go all year long, and that was just done by the art teacher. So I think that parents are looking for those kinds of extracurricular activities in addition to if their kids are if their kids aren't involved in SOAR, which is 5 days a week. So SOAR, to answer your question actually though, sorry, SOAR is actually specifically designed with learning outcomes and MCAS, they're tracking MCAS improvement based on participation in SOAR.
Was that how it was laid out?
I don't remember that.
Student
I don't
achievement,
know.
student achievement is a huge part
That's
of that
what
program.
they sold it to us, was
Yeah.
that it was an MCAS improvement thing.
Well, I also remember that there were going to be other programs, other fun programs based
Right.
on.
And there
based
are
on-
within
Oh, okay.
SOAR, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so they do cooking,
Yep.
they did a Lego,
They do theater,
mosaic,
right.
they,
Right.
they do a lot of innovative
It was
things.
supposed to be a nice balance.
But it is a balance,
Based on need and demand.
right, but it's 5 days a week, basically.
Yeah, so it
Kids
seems
are-
like, sorry, you had actually a
Yeah,
question.
no, that's okay. You're kind of, go ahead. I was just curious how many kids were in SOAR. Do we know how many?
It increased this year, I believe, although I would have to go back and check, I believe they consistently had about 20 to 25 students. So last year, they were really in the place of, do we continue the program because it was not fiscally solvent? They were losing money in Granby.
Mhm.
This year, they did not. This year, they had a sustainable attendance in SOAR, so.
That's good.
It'll be interesting now that we're in one building, if there's a different interest, an increased interest, or,
So it
Yeah,
seems
I-
like, go ahead. The content is one issue, but the frequency of
Yes.
the offering is another one. So are you saying that now we're gonna need two parallel programs? One will accommodate those infrequent requests?
I think that's what the leadership team will talk about when they look at the data, and perhaps come up with a proposal for things like an art club, or if they surveyed the students and came up with an interest survey, is there interest in the students to have less frequent activities after school?
So as I recall, this was a self-sustaining program,
SOAR
right?
is, yes.
So, as such, if we have the baseline already, as you're saying, 2025
Mhm.
students are happy or are not, I don't know. But if we establish that they are, I think this is beyond the numbers that, or above, at least somewhat above, the numbers that was gonna be the break-even
Mhm.
point so they could offer the program.
Right.
We may not need to create a parallel program, only now require that parents let us know way in advance so that we can tell the provider on these days for these components of the program you're going to have
Mhm.
extra
Sure.
students, so that
Yeah.
that may be a consideration for
Mhm.
us not to worry about creating and monitoring
Mhm.
and administering two
Yeah.
different type of programs.
Mm-hmm.
Because this was a big conversation
Yeah.
at that
Yeah. Oh,
time.
this-
I was on the tail end of it.
Yeah.
Well, and I like what you said though about if it's the homework help involving the students, whether it's NHS or, other kids that are thinking about education or whatever, as long as they meet some kind of threshold, it's good for college applications and different things and different exposure.
I think that my kids did both, and it is pretty different. So the SOAR program it's a longer thing that you sign up for, and you can go for just 1 day a week. You don't have to
Right.
go for 5, but there's a fee, and your child, if you're going to pay that much money, you think your child should be there the whole time. And then, there is homework help, and then there's a break, and then they do an activity. So it's designed to get the homework help done earlier for the kids who have to leave early. So they're flexible like that. The difference is with the homework help club, it was right after school, it was 1 hour, and we had a late bus, and it was
Mhm.
free.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Well, we lost the late bus because
Yeah, we
of-
lost the late
of
bus, and then we
budget
we
problems.
put everything into the SOAR program, which made sense at the time, because we didn't have a late bus.
Mhm.
And then we cut the stipends for the homework club, so
Mhm.
that's the story of SOAR. And those are the differences, and it is nice, to just sort of say, oh, it's a busy week, why don't you stay and do homework club today?
Mhm.
And I'll meet you at the house at, 3:30 or whatever. And so that was really convenient, if you had that ability. Where with SOAR, it's, you have to pick your child up, and it's just a bigger commitment. So I think parents just miss that quick little.
Mhm.
I miss the funds that went along with that program. So,
In general, parental involvement is a strength, both at Granby Junior Senior High School and at the elementary level. Generally, there's a positive perception of staff supporting and encouraging students, and overall, there's satisfaction with the school, whether it's Granby Junior Senior High School or the elementary level.
Can I just backtrack for just a minute? I wanted to ask before and I got distracted, but what are some of the I'm sure it's pretty basic, but what are the facility concerns for the high school?
I would have to go back and let me just pick it up. Technology infrastructure is one, for sure. I think quality of the physical plant.
Mm-hmm.
Air quality is a concern. The physical plant is a concern. The comments, I did put a link to the survey.
I couldn't open it, but it was probably me because I'm just
actually,
like
I
that.
couldn't open another one either. It brought me to a.
It said the survey
dead
was
page.
closed.
Did it allow the responses to populate, and then you can click on the responses?
I did not
At the
have any
top?
luck with that. Mine said when I brought it up, it says the survey is
I
closed.
know, it's hot.
Oh,
Oh, I
now,
see.
you know what, now that I was doing it on my phone before, and now it says, it wants me to actually fill out the survey.
If you keep scrolling down. I did the same thing.
I feel like I already filled this out. I'm
No,
surprised.
sorry, never mind. Go
So
right here.
since we're talking
Oh,
about
responses,
this,
got it.
I clicked
Thanks.
on that, yeah,
Oh.
I couldn't bring
Do you
it
mind
Oh,
up.
it says no,
either.
it says this form is no longer,
if I
Here we go,
insert
here we
a
go, here we go.
request,
Yes.
and maybe formalize it,
Summary?
can we have these, because
Summary.
Sunday, for instance, I spent time going
Yeah.
over some of these things, but most of these were not there. Can we have these, a little in advance so that
Yes.
we
Yeah, there it
can
is.
review?
Yep. Well, it would be to introduce it tonight, and then to take it back up as you've had time to go through it and ask questions on the 27th.
Yep.
So the long and short, Cheryl, is that you're gonna be coming back with more information on the survey.
The long and short is, yes.
Okay.
I mean, the information is there for you to review.
Yes.
The comments are, very honest. And
I wanna get to the comments, but I can't seem to be able to get to the comments.
That school climate link at the end is supposed to bring us somewhere? I don't go anywhere either. Alright,
I'll give you a tutorial later.
Okay. any questions? Other questions, comments?
Oh, I just saw, this is gonna be an aside, but Mr. Williams is leaving.
Yes.
Yes.
So
It's a
will
resignation.
the, what is it, Black Cat Theater, will that go away then, or?
It's
Was-
not ours. Black Cat is South Hadley's.
Oh, but he was the link.
Gap.
Yeah, he was.
He was Gap though. He was the Granby Arts Project here. So
Well,
he ran.
Yeah, even Gap was a volunteer-based organization, and
Okay.
he. So we, you know, we
I clicked on
we
that.
have volunteers, but he obviously brought a lot of expertise to that. So we have to, you know, we have to.
Yep, there's a
Talk
stipend
about
position for it, so
Yeah.
that will be posted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's not that organization, and this isn't to say that we're not pleased and happy to continue that, there are other organizations, there's community theater that we can be involved in, it's Exit 7, their community theater is available to us in many venues.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be an adjustment.
Yes.
For all those programs, music and drama
Mhm.
and
Oh, wait,
other things. Do you have anything else on this? Okay. WPI partnership.
Yes, so the WPI partnership. This is a partnership with WPI.
WPI
WPI
is Worcester
Polytechnic
Polytechnic Institute,
Institute.
okay.
And it came through the U.S. Department of Education, and is also partnering with the University of Massachusetts at Amherst to address mathematics achievement. So we have submitted a non-binding letter of interest to engage in a national study, which would help us analyze our students' mathematical achievement and work with teachers and an online platform to improve and intervene for students to raise their math achievement. We expect that immediately we would be able to assess students via an online assessment, identify weakness areas, and then have teachers through the tutorial online provide support, but then also work with professional development to improve their skill set at intervening with the students in a more traditional setting in the classroom. There's no cost to the district, which we're very excited about.
The one thing is that, you know, sometimes I fail to visualize is when there's something like coaching, mentoring, tutoring, these things that require this close interaction when it's done online, how, you know, how they measure the impact of it on AMCAS, and they were saying 20%, 30%?
10 to 20%.
10 to 20%? So how that is measured, I'm always curious because it's really difficult to gauge those things. But I'm happy that we are pursuing these things because regardless of what it is, it's good that students now have another opportunity to get supplemental advice, supplemental information, and help. When is this starting?
We submitted the letter of interest, so we're not aware yet if we're accepted. We think we will be, and then I'm sure details will follow as to start. And we have talked with some of the teachers of math. They're excited to potentially use it in our intervention blocks that we have at the middle school, and also our math lab, which is a intervention for students in math in grade 9.
And is it unlimited? I wasn't clear on that one.
So, first year it is a study, so there will be a control group and an intervention group. And then afterwards, it would be unlimited, is my understanding.
It is unlimited after that?
After that, yeah. So as you know, the United States Department of Education is looking for research-based interventions, and this is a way to develop that research base that we have a control group and an intervention group, and therefore develop the research that says this intervention was successful. It raised student achievement in mathematics by a certain percent, or it didn't. So therefore, we move in a different direction.
Last question for me. How do we know that teachers who will be providing these tutoring sessions will know and will align with our curriculum?
Right, so when the professional development happens, that would be a topic of conversation. How are we making sure that once we assess students and determine areas of weakness, that when we're intervening, it's not outside our curriculum?
Okay.
And maybe it could be that it identifies that it's not part of our curriculum, and that's why it's coming up as a weakness for our students, because our curriculum is missing it.
So the program actually is already aligned with
Yes.
how it should be, and
Yes.
what you're saying,
Right.
if we're not aligning with that, maybe there are some gaps
exactly.
that we need to, okay.
Yep.
Any questions?
So 62% of our students are proficient in math over in the district in 2016. And when we use DART data with Massachusetts, so we have about 10 districts that we're comparative to for demographics, size, school size, district size. Right now we rank 5th out of the 10th in mathematic achievement, so that would be something that we would be looking for. Are we going to see from a 62% to maybe a 72%, which really would be impressive, because math is an area of concern across the Commonwealth. Those 10 comparison districts range from 55% proficient in math to 73% proficient in math. So I'd like to see us at the 70%.
What's the lower one?
55.
Okay, but that would be beyond the 20% that they're talking about. So they were saying, I guess, percentage point, not percentage?
So this is Massachusetts DART data that says of the 10 districts, the lowest performing district in our cohort of districts that we compare to, 55% of the students scored proficient in mathematics.
Okay.
That's from Massachusetts. That doesn't have anything to do with
Granby.
there was an intervention, or this is just straight MCAS data from the state of Massachusetts, from DESE. So we fall in the middle of our cohort, which I would like us to fall in the
Okay, so
higher
just to
end.
clarify, this is a question I ask very often, even at work. Are we talking about percentage gain or percentage point gain?
This
So are we
would be
saying
the
that it will-
percentage of students, so I would, point taken, this would be, they're tracking percent gain on MCAS scores for students. So they're tracking a 10% increase or a 20% increase. I would say that would convert to overall improvement in the percentage of students that are proficient.
Okay.
So if, in other words, if we have students that are falling in needs improvement high, for example, if more of those students score 10% or 20%, they gain, then they're going to move into the proficient category. So then that would improve our proficient rate, the rate of students that are proficient.
Cool. That's it?
That's it.
All right.
That's an information only one.
Okay. Any questions for Cheryl? All right, thank you, Cheryl. School committee goals.
So I did do a little cheat sheet for you. I don't know if let me rephrase. I can't remember if the school committee had said that they wanted to do a retreat to talk about their goals and goal setting. So I just put it on the agenda and reminded the committee that these were your goals from last year. And since your goals from last year, the school committee approved the strategic plan. And so it's really up to you whether we want to sort of hash out some new goals, revise these goals, or have a retreat where we maybe do that.
I don't recall us deciding.
Did
I
we
think
talk about it?
we talked about
Didn't
it.
we talk
and
about it?
kind of-
I don't think we decided on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think we leaned towards a retreat, but then somehow we came away from the conversation.
I feel like the conversation came back, like maybe we didn't need a full retreat for it because there was goals that we already outlined, I feel like, that like,
We still have to do 3 out of 4 of
Right.
these.
and that's what it was, is if we already have, that's what it was. If we have stuff that we're not finished with, then maybe we didn't need to do a retreat focus on the ones that we hadn't accomplished? Am I making that up?
No.
Yes.
I don't know, but it sounds really good to me.
And I like that.
Fuzzy and hazy. It's all sounds
Yes.
a little
I don't-
familiar.
I know.
I don't
There's
think
a
we
whole
need,
I
lot to
didn't
go.
take good notes on that one.
I don't think we need a whole retreat. I think we have 3 very good goals right in front of us that are and that we're actively working on. That we'll probably need this next school year to finish.
So you guys help me understand now. The first one,
The policy review,
policy review is
we're
in
coming
progress.
up on. Yes, we've got 2 meetings pending,
Right.
and we should be able to finish it in that. So that
Yeah.
goal will be complete.
so the second one is somewhat connected to the first one, but it's creation of that handbook that will inform
Right.
the broader school community. The third one is probably an ongoing thing anyway, but we created the Budget and Finance Subcommittee, which should have more along those lines. Similarly, the fourth one, we created the Community Relations Subcommittee. That would hopefully have some along those lines. It's just that we never really, I think, spoke beyond these goals, that what that means, what we expect to see, when we expect to see those things. We just came up with the goals. So it would be good to get together and discuss those.
And that was that was the retreat, the first retreat, right? I mean, that was
Yes,
that
yep.
was a lengthy process.
Yeah, but we just, so I think what you're saying is we just picked goals, we didn't define what we wanted to end them with, or
Yeah, so,
what was gonna be the end product when we're finished.
yes.
And how are we gonna, a timeline for how we're gonna get there so that we can benchmark our progress, and otherwise they're just goals on a piece of paper.
So when would you like to have this retreat? What's good timing for that?
Well, I think what I'm hearing is, do we need a retreat? Do we tie it to a part of a school committee meeting? Or do we do a specific retreat for it?
A specific retreat basically means an additional meeting.
An additional meeting, right?
Right, so we can shorten one of these school committee meetings and take rest of the time for this conversation. That's fine too.
Well, my
Would-
only concern with that is, we're rolling into a new school year, and we know how that goes. We start to get really dense on the agenda items, and I don't want to take away the time and energy we need for what's coming up
Yeah, that's fair.
and rush
Well,
through.
Yep.
Yeah.
And my thought was to, you would also have feedback from the school committee evaluation, which may help define some of the timeline and end product.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
So if we did that and then set maybe a September date, I think it's early enough to have goals that are,
already in place.
product-based.
Right.
And get a timeline for the school year.
That's actually a good point. So the survey, the evaluation should inform, hopefully, at least some of the goals that we're gonna be, or objectives that we're gonna be talking about. By that time, we may already be done with one or two, or both of them, and we may come up with additional goals and then
And then at that
talk
point,
about it.
we can be more specific about objectives
Yes.
and timelines
Yep.
and so, I don't know, that feels like more of a retreat to me. A single meeting as opposed to,
But looks like the next item on our agenda will drive this one. So we can still decide whether or not it means a retreat, a separate meeting, or conversation during, but before we did a separate meeting for this thing. So is it okay if we jump to the second one then, the evaluation? When can we start that evaluation, school committee evaluation, not the superintendent evaluation?
when?
When, yeah.
And how would you like to do it? Would you like to survey?
How did we do that last year? We did
Had
it
an
at a school
open meeting,
committee.
there were,
Yeah, we
we had
did.
good,
Yeah.
turnout.
I know,
remember that.
we had
I was
a lot
like,
of people here.
shocked.
I
I was excited.
That said, I mean, you said 83 returns, right? And you said it could be better.
Yes.
If we had 83 people in this room, it would be very crowded. And I would love to hear from more than 83 people if they are willing to share, and we would love to have their feedback. So survey would be a good supplement at the very
Right.
least, because that kind of broadens the audience. And then we can have a session here with, you know, with everybody involved, and we can have their first-hand feedback and input, suggestions.
So then, if we were to send out a survey and leave it open for whatever, a couple of weeks, however long we leave it open, would it make sense to have some preliminary results that we can talk about? Or, I mean, let's say you get 85 responses, we can't go through 85 surveys. I mean, that's time consuming, and, I mean, how
You're talking about if the survey responses are mostly
Comment.
open-ended?
Feedback.
yeah, feedback or however it's formulated, but
Yeah.
I mean, we need to summarize it in some way so that it's a productive conversation, as opposed to us going through 83 surveys and, you know, I mean, I don't see us doing that, do you?
Well, don't most of the survey tools analyze the results for you, or you
Right,
get
so if you
some
did a
kind-
Likert scale, which is what the school climate survey was, you'll get a feel for, does the school committee support social emotional learning? You know, scale, I totally agree, totally disagree. The school committee has bent over backwards to develop social emotional learning programs, support, resources. If that's not communicated in you agree in a survey question, then it should help us understand what is it that we're not communicating,
Right.
right? And then we can look at the comments to say, well, what is it that we're missing as school committee? So I think it's a combination. I guess what I'm saying is I think it's a combination of a Likert scale question, and then the comments can help us understand the answers to some of that.
And so is there some sort of template that already exists?
I'm sure.
There are some other school districts
Yeah.
that are doing this, so we can look at a
Yeah.
few successful ones and see.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that we're asking the right questions,
Would
and
the
not just.
27th be too late to put
any
a survey
questions.
out
That's-
to you
that's
to say, do you agree with
fair.
the questions on the
Yeah.
survey?
Yeah,
And then maybe put it out that first couple of weeks
Yeah.
of school?
I would prefer not to ask like 50 questions.
Right.
me
If
too.
we have
Surveys
good,
are best 10 questions or under. Like, you're
especially if we're gonna have comments
Right.
allowed for each, more than 10 we won't be able to.
well,
really-
also it's the time. People will go in and they'll look at the survey, and if they have to scroll down to see the end, you lose them. So either that or you'll get no responses, which were part of what you want. So I work with surveys a lot in past lives and my current role. So, putting them together, it's optimal to have 5 Likert questions, maybe a couple true false mixed in, and then the last 2 or 3 are your open-ended looking for responses. But typically after every Likert question, there's a box, please, if you strongly disagreed or felt strongly one way or the other, and it's locked, 200 characters are left, like a tweet, But I think if we did it got it out by the beginning of school.
Yeah.
So you could approve the questions at the 27th?
Yeah.
And then we could turn it around and send it out.
Yeah,
Who should be in charge of coming up with those 10 questions? Mostly for the committee. Since you have experience, would you have time to?
I can type them up, but I don't know what to have,
well, no, I assume that if there's these templates that exist, that we can somehow look through and see questions and say, oh yeah, that's a good one, let's put that on there, and I don't wanna have you do this from scratch, I mean,
Yeah,
No,
that's
no,
how
no,
we create
I
the
wasn't
wheel.
saying from scratch. But if we're gonna limit it to 10, there's a selection process, because I
Right.
know that, at least I remember that some other school districts had way more than 10. And in fact, to be very honest, I was gonna say 20 when you said 10, cause I was thinking that maybe the first so many would be,
Where are, yeah.
1 to 5. The rest, the couple of ending questions would be open-ended.
You can always do a second, like a follow-up, but
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just been my experience is that if you have too many questions,
You're
you
right.
start
Delete.
Yeah, you won't get anyone to answer, or you won't get real answers. Your
Right.
comment is none. Everything's fine.
Yeah,
So that's not super helpful.
I agree. Brevity is gonna be really important.
And if we're not, if we feel like,
Meaningful and short.
if we
We
feel
are
like we're
great.
not getting to the point of what it is that we're looking for, you can try again. But really, you should be able to summarize what it is we're trying to evaluate without having, in broader strokes. I think, right?
All right. So would you like me to just go out and find, 5 samples, send it to the committee, at the next meeting, or maybe before the next meeting, if you can separately send me your selections, I can,
That's the way to do it.
okay, I can put it together, we can make it part of our conversation and decide.
Okay.
Okay.
So
All
then
right,
that'll
let's
be
do
done at the next meeting.
Yeah, we can finish it next meeting. Survey.
I second that. I think we need to make a motion to have pizza delivered to the meeting. Or grinders.
And we are shooting for our
Cindy's French
August
fries.
27th meeting? Okay, so I have to do this. Alright. Good thing I took a break this week. I can now do meaningful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so if we can have, if I can respectfully ask for maybe a few days to be able to review it and send it back to
Sure.
you, that would be really helpful.
As soon as you said respectfully, I will absolutely.
We're getting a lot done, it's only 8 o'clock.
All right, let's keep moving here. We're on a
Yeah.
roll.
I know.
Now to the
We wanna show
superintendent.
Adam, we wanna put our best foot forward here
Yeah.
and show him that we don't do 4-hour meetings.
Superintendent evaluation.
So it's that time.
Yes, yes it
I
is.
feel like we just finished it. didn't we?
Yes, it's a little,
We're a little behind.
yes.
Yes, with the timing, and we had the same conversation, and Cheryl asked the same question. We just, recently finished it, but it was really, the timing was off. If
Yes.
we want to bring it to its right timing, we may just want to pull it up a little bit. But it takes a little while, and it's cumbersome, and we should decide how we want to really go around that cumbersome nature of that evaluation.
Right. So as you set your goals, really my goals will be set. So the first part of this
Yes.
would be to, within September, approve my goals, approve your goals, approve my goals, and then also have a discussion about evidence that you'd like to see potentially that supports the evaluation, and then we would be more in line with a timeline for an open evaluation in late winter, early spring.
So we really have two things, right? One is, don't we owe you an evaluation for the year that just ended? And then we have to talk about goals for next year, or are they kind of wrapped into one?
Say that again?
Are we behind? Are we supposed to do a year-end evaluation?
Because it sounded like you were talking about setting goals, which would be for next year, but we still have the year that just ended that we didn't do an evaluation for.
What is the time frame supposed to be for your evaluation? Is it
It's
supposed
a
to?
midterm, isn't it a midterm? A mid-year?
Mid-year.
exam?
Right, so
Yeah.
you set your goals and then you do sort of a formative, where are we, a check-in, and then a summative at the end.
Right, and we haven't done the summative.
Yeah, we
Right?
did.
We did?
We did.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
sure we did.
There
There was an article in the newspaper. I did great.
We did do
Just
one
saying.
in the winter, but I'm a little, so there's no way I don't think it's fair to set goals in November and then do your review in January. That's-
Right, so we should be setting goals in September, right?
Okay.
Formative,
Yeah.
more in,
I think that's where I was getting lost.
apparently, you were in Italy.
No.
I'm just kidding.
No.
So we all did them at home.
Yeah, we
That
did
was
it, and then
one of
I,
the hardest ones I've ever
But
done.
that felt like that was a long time ago.
Wasn't
It was
it-
really
Yeah.
like
So Cheryl's been with us for 2 years. So
The first year was a blur.
You know, the first year we said we're just gonna do it a little later, so it put us, you know, in the middle of that second year, and that's why we're thinking that, you know, something happened very recently, which is true, but we want to start the new process
Right.
as intended.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Just as long as I did what I was supposed to do.
Yes, you
and
did.
it's-
You did,
okay.
absolutely.
Yeah,
It was
the
actually a
timing
good
just goes
conversation.
really off to me.
It does feel like a long time ago.
All right, so we are planning on starting that in September,
Yes.
maybe mid-September.
Yes.
Okay. Second meeting in September.
Probably both, right? School committee goals and.
Right. Jen, as you can see, I am using OneNote and taking a lot of
Look at
notes
that.
here.
Preaching it at work too.
I love that one.
Evernote
Evernote,
is the
whatever.
I actually made it one of my goals at work too, because I'm not really great in taking notes. Now,
What is it? I don't even know what it is. What is it?
OneNote is
Yeah.
basically Microsoft's
Focus.
note-taking
sorry.
It's like a note.
software.
It's a notebook, but in digital form, and it actually works like a notebook.
And you can find things that you
So if-
because you categorize them the way you want them.
Right. So
I should show you
in
my
Granby
rocket notebook.
schools, if you were, you know, and if you're older, around my age, a lot of us had Mrs. Trotman in 6th grade, and she taught us how to take notes in a
And
notebook.
prepositions.
And is it where was where be then become became in action verbs.
Right. What about
Um,
above grass?
And she taught us how, and she used to come and she'd swing our notebooks by the binder, nothing could fall out, and you weren't allowed to have pockets. And until OneNote came out about 2 years ago, into my world anyway, I kept a 3-ring binder my entire life, based on Mrs. Trotman's teachings, for work and for all my home stuff. So now I just do it on here, but she'd still be proud.
Yes. So with that,
Sorry.
You're gonna have
no,
to
that's
show
good.
me that.
Hmm?
You're gonna have to show me that after the meeting's
Yes,
over.
absolutely.
Okay,
This
I
is
just wanna see it.
great. Closing of West Street School.
Yes.
A little, if you don't mind, a little
yes.
preface to that. I got a call from Brian Hochschild last week. He was chairing the West Street School kind of assessment committee. I don't know what the official name, but what are we going to do with West Street? That committee. I think Brian was chairing that, and his voicemail was saying, "Hey, you know, we got GAA approaching us for field use, and they thought that the select board now has ownership of the property, and the select board doesn't. So when will you guys discuss and turn over the school property to the town, as was discussed?" The thing is, just to explain a little bit, especially after I had the conversation with Cheryl, it is not like, you know, the school ended and the next day we locked the door and walked out. There was a lot of stuff in the school that had to be inventoried and then assessed, taken out, some of them discarded. So David and John, they were collaborating to do the electronics and technology and electrical side with facilities side. And at that point, I will turn it to you what the progress and status of that was.
When we talked about, as the school department and the leadership team, about closing West Street, one of our concerns was East Meadow going to be open on time? It is clear that East Meadow, the new school, will be open on time. The second thing we talked about was the moving of teacher material supplies, resources, electronic equipment, telephones, whether we're storing that or moving that into the new building. So this week, today, tomorrow, and Wednesday will be the last of the movers, moving teacher, things that have been tagged to come to East Meadow. And then with that confirmation last week, we are now comfortable to relinquish the school building, West Street, back to the town by August 20th. So that's barring any unforeseen, the movers go on strike or something, although they were up and back 202 all day today, so we're very hopeful that nothing will change. David worked with John and facilities to move all of the electronic equipment that's going to be picked up as, what's that word, when it's extra and it's not donated, but they collect it for recycling. Whew. So he had to reorganize that, and he was able to organize a pickup for Wednesday. So they're doing all of that work. All of the equipment that's going to be recycled will be picked up Wednesday. So as long as all of that goes according to plan, we're ready to give the building back on the 20th.
Or 20th.
So will the building be completely empty? Like,
It won't be completely empty, but everything that the school department needs would be removed.
are we
So
gonna-
there are things like telephones have to be taken out, servers, so the whole building in the from the end of school until the 20th, that's the work that's been going on in West
But
Street.
on
So I
the
don't-
20th, will it be, is that what you're asking?
On the
Yeah, I
20th,
just-
the doors will lock,
And nothing will be
and-
inside?
and nothing, well, no, there's probably be things, that would need to be disposed of, but at that point, it's facilities.
I just
Okay,
wanna
so
make
it
sure
is-
we're not in an issue where the town comes to us and says, you left us $20,000 worth of junk removal.
No, because it's mostly, it would be mostly outdated furniture, which, they would dispose of, whether it was school department or, town, so.
Okay.
So does that mean that could we vote on it on the 27th?
No,
Or
we'd
do
have to
we
vote
need-
on it tonight
Today,
because
yeah.
we'd like to relinquish it on
the
August
20th.
20th.
So we'll write the letters, saying the effective date, and, you know, that's gonna be effective on.
So when school committee votes, my task would be to engage Fred Duperret, our attorney, and formally write that letter, and then send it to,
Okay, who signs off? I think the school committee signs off, so.
so I would
Yeah,
be
so if
reaching
you
out
let
to
me
you
know, I'll
as,
stop
yep.
by and sign.
So we need to vote on that. All right, so I'll
Yes.
make a motion then.
Okay. What's the motion?
To relinquish West Street School back to the town as of August 20th, 2018.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions, discussion?
If anybody didn't see the article about the closing of West Street, it was awesome, so there's a link to it here.
Okay.
It was a very good article about
I
closing
think I
of
tried
West Street.
clicking on it and it came up, that it wasn't, page not found. That it says, sorry, we couldn't find the page you're looking for.
I wonder if it's because it was the Gazette, if it's not, archived somehow.
It would say, you know, you have to pay. Usually.
It says try our
Oh,
news
it's
bank
because the link is
archives.
broken.
Oh, okay, I'll redo the link.
Okay.
The link is broken.
Yep.
Alrighty, all in
I
favor?
will email you the correct.
Turning over the West Street property to the town of Granby on August 20th and sending the letter to the town as it is completed. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. So I'll let the select board know, and Chris and Brian, I'll copy him if I can find his email address, that it's done. So in the meantime, if the JA is asking, you know, whether or not they can use the fields, depending on the timing, they can, I guess, come here, or, you know, we can tell the select board that if they need to give permission, they can give permission to.
Well,
Maybe not the legally right thing.
I don't think they're gonna do
So
that.
that's an issue, right? Just August 20. Let's find out when GA wanted to use it. We can set them
I
up.
believe it's for soccer.
Yeah, then we
right.
can set them up with this date as well. That, hey, you know, as of that date. So maybe the select board can receive their request and say,
Does anyone know what the town process is for requesting use of fields? Does it go through the
I
rec
don't-
department, or
I
Like-
have no idea.
where else do they play soccer? The Westover fields?
Brown Ellis.
soccer. There's
I think
there
it's
is the
Parks and Rec, isn't it?
across from
That's not
Sapowski's.
through,
There's
GA.
Yeah, so how do people go about getting
GA
those
doesn't own the
fields?
fields, the
Yeah, I
Parks
think
and
they
Rec,
go
it must be
through
Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
yeah.
I can find out. Hold please.
Hold please.
But I'll let the select board know so that they can,
So I don't know
They
if
can
there's
at
a
least let
form
everybody
they
else
use
know.
or.
yeah. Oh, you mean just in the meantime until the 20th,
Right,
if
if they
somebody
filled out a
wants
form
to
with
use
us,
it?
I could say, oh, we have this
Yeah.
form and just, here.
That's actually what I meant, but I'm not sure whether or not, split decision is legal or not, so we can find
Right,
out.
so
I
we
was
can
saying
accept
until the
the form
20th, we
and
can say,
say-
hey, it's on us. After the 20th, it's on somebody else.
Right, and they can fill out the form and then we can just give it to Park and
Yeah.
Rec and say, hey, either staple it to
Yeah.
your request form or
Yeah.
whatever.
Honestly, I don't know when GAA season starts, so I'll find out.
Soccer starts at the end of August.
Okay, so
We still have
we may have enough time for that, but I'll let them know tomorrow. All right, so going back to our old business, launch services contract.
So the committee opened the bids this afternoon.
The committee being,
The committee of Deanne Pankowski, Adam Turquini, Nancy Jenks, our nurse leader, and Dave.
Okay.
Bischofitz.
so the committee that was opening and evaluating the
So, yep.
bids? Okay.
They evaluated the bids using the rubric that the bids were created by, and the recommendation has been to extend the contract to Chartwells.
Any more info that you can share, or?
I could turn it over to Adam.
I'm sure myself
Deanne.
and Dan can talk about it. So, kind of a preface is that I came in on the tail end of the whole process. So we were kind of handcuffed to the evaluation criterion that TMS had produced for the RFP. So based on that, Chartwells was the most suitable vendor to extend services to,
Based on the rubric
based on the rubric.
that
Okay.
TMS provided through this RFP process.
Not necessarily financials?
So
Yes.
financially as well. Yes, yep, financially as well. But the bigger, I think the bigger point is that it's a 3-year contract, but it's a 1-year renew and then renew. And I feel with myself being in this position, there'll be some more oversight on Chartwells and food service to make sure that what was outlined in this proposal is exactly what they're doing. And if that's not the case, then we non-renew and build a valuation criterion based on the needs of Granby Public School.
So at the end of the first year, we evaluate, and if we say, no, this is,
Yep.
if we say it's fine, then they have 2 more years? Is
They
that
have another
works?
year, and then
Yeah.
at the end of that
Oh,
second
so-
year,
so-
then we could renew.
Okay,
Yep.
so every
Yep.
year, we
Yep,
have the
every
option
year
to
is a
say
renew.
it's not
Yep.
working out.
Yep.
Right.
Okay,
I'm hopeful though that now I'm in this position full time that I can have some oversight on them. That if they're not performing what they told us they would in that proposal, with some guidance and some oversight from myself, we can get them to that point. But based on the RFP that was out there, they were they're the best choice to fulfill our food service contract.
So in even simpler terms, going forward with the next RFP, we have to change the rubric. Because the rubric doesn't suit our needs in the way that it needs to. It was confusing. I too, this was the first time when we sat down to evaluate, you don't even open the box of these with the RFP information inside until you're all sitting in the room, and then you crack it open. So we're all seeing it for the very first time. This is the first time I saw the rubric, and it was clunky. The evaluation process was just something that we need to reevaluate and update. But like Adam said, based on the rubric that was already out there, right, and proposed under this particular bid, they came back with the best proposal.
And just a quick overview of a bid versus RFP is that for a bid, as long as all of your responses meet what was in the bid spec, you need to select the lowest bidder. In terms of a food service vendor where there's some specific criteria that they need to meet, you go out for an RFP, and you don't necessarily need to pick the one with the lowest price. It's the vendor who is most suitable to perform that service. So just want to kind of give a quick comparison on why we wouldn't go out for bid and RFP. And food service is typically an RFP process. And again, they're the most suitable based on the criterion that was built for this. We made the recommendation to go with Chartwell's.
Okay.
So I have two questions.
Yeah.
And I get the fact that the thing was built by the other group. The biggest issues I think we saw with that was they didn't respond to the dip in the enrollment fast and effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like maybe mid-November before they realized there was only like half the students they were prepping lunch for.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't here when we needed to be here to answer the questions. Built into this year, was there options or things built into where they have to be a little bit more responsive to those?
So that's not typically something you would build into the RFP itself and meeting the criteria of the RFP, but that's going to be, incumbent on me to make sure that they are fulfilling, those duties. They should be preparing lunch for the enrollment that there is and so on. So that's on me to make sure that happens.
We did have a conversation about that today in outlining maybe at the beginning of the year with them very clearly in written form what our expectations are.
And we'd also
And-
asked for them to be at one meeting a month, I think,
Right.
with us, and I think they came to two.
No, it was
sent
one
emails.
a quarter.
Or one a quarter.
One a
I think they came
quarter.
to two and sent emails for some other ones, but.
Yes, and I think, like Adam said, because he's here full-time, whereas TMS was only here 2 days a week, I think we're gonna see some improvement just because of that fact. And that they know that there's gonna be more oversight, and more accountability, and so we're hopeful that, with that, so in conjunction with maybe what we need to talk about is what are our expectations going forward for this year, right? Again, so that we can sort of benchmark how they're doing. It would make sense, I think.
Yeah.
Simple, realistic expectations, something that Adam also has, that he can keep in his mind on a daily basis when he's working with them. Or
So
however.
when will we see their contract? The contract that.
Their new contract?
Yeah.
So now we recommend we vote, and then we'll forward that to Fred to draft the contract.
Okay, so I will say this up front. One of the items in the previous contract that was recurring, that we realized a little, late in the process, but they did not change, but we already told them that it would not be acceptable, is them looking at the enrollment from 2 years ago, and then creating a budget based on that. That was the problem that Mike is talking about. Every year it's almost a surprise when everybody knew that we were expecting fewer students. This year we're stabilizing. We're just the numbers are either the same or maybe a little higher or whatever. That's something like that. But regardless, we can't look at 2 years ago because 2 years ago we had more students.
So the good news is, couldn't we give them preliminary information right now before they come back with the contract? Right?
Well, they got that when they submitted the RFP. They got updated,
Updated as of
Enrollment.
when?
As of when that RFP was.
Yeah.
right.
So couldn't we give them even more, it's gonna be even more updated now than it was then. So we need to provide the most accurate information they have the time now to do it. I mean, we have the ability to be able to give them that information and then include that in their,
Yeah, I feel
bid,
like we should.
I mean, their contract.
I
I'm
feel
sorry?
like we should have some control over when they get the numbers and how they get the numbers based on the way the contract is worded.
Oh, certainly, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, certainly, yep. And what I'll do is I'll look at the last contract to see how that was built and see where that language is specifically,
Yeah.
and you know,
But
work
there
on
were
it together
there
to
were
make
two
sure
things that caused contention typically, Adam. One of them, to me, it's an odd way of budgeting. That's, you know, we're gonna have this much for deficit, and then all the numbers always match that item in the contract. The other one was the first item that I mentioned, which is, hey, you know, we're going to look at enrollment, but we're going to look at enrollment from this particular year, and that year is not last year, or the projections that we have already for next year, or the state has for next year, but we're going to look at the previous couple of years' projections, enrollment. That caused major problems the last several years because obviously enrollment was going down.
And again, I think it's because there was lack of oversight from the finance department. You know, on that I'm gonna assume that was a lot of the disconnect there.
Yep. Cool. So when do we need to see that contract and sign that contract so we're ready to go for the beginning of the year?
ASAP.
Which means we need another meeting soon, or can it wait till our next meeting?
In order to do what?
To be able to review the contract and then approve
And then
it.
approve it.
How quickly can?
That would be almost impossibly close to.
Yeah, 'cause we're like 3 weeks out, right?
Hmm?
So we're like 3 weeks out now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can't imagine this is the first time this has happened. I mean, if they know verbally that they have
Right,
the
they have the
contract,
RFP.
it's not like they're
Right.
gonna sit there and wait to do anything until they have a signed contract in their hand.
No, but we may not want to sign the contract that they give to us, which I already mentioned a few times that I wouldn't sign that contract if it has something that says enrollment from 2 years ago.
Well, okay, and I get that, and I also don't think that's gonna be the case, because now we have Adam, and now we are gonna update the enrollment numbers, right? Before they provide that contract, cause I also agree with Emery that
Oh,
it
yeah,
needs to
yeah.
be based on current information.
Certainly.
So if the language is changed that way, then I would like to ask the school committee if everybody's okay with me signing that contract without a meeting, provided those two changes are made to the contract.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Are you good with that too? And I'm only asking, very honestly, the reason, I always ask to see the contract before we sign it, all of us. So if you're good with that, you know, since we're cutting it pretty close, provided again that they change those items in an agreeable way, then we'll, okay.
But we are gonna see the contract. The full committee is gonna see a contract at some
Well,
point,
if
right?
you're gonna see the contract and approve it at that time, then we need another meeting, that's what we're saying, because our next meeting is August 27th.
No, what I'm saying is, sign it, but I still wanna see a
Oh,
contract.
yeah, oh,
absolutely,
yeah,
that's-
yeah,
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 that's-
yeah, certainly. Oh, yeah, yeah.
So we should be able to see it and have it for our record.
Yes, absolutely.
Certainly. Yep.
Just to backtrack, I heard a friend of mine is on the Parks Committee, and so GAA and other people that want to use fields at West Street or other ones not owned would go through the Parks Committee. And she said, as of Friday, the Parks Committee is drafting a letter claiming temporary ownership of the fields at West Street until a final decision is made on the property by the Select Board. So just for the fields, like the baseball field and doing soccer and stuff, they're saying, you know, to come to them, is the way I'm understanding her.
They're asking the select board for that?
So this is what she wrote. I said, random question, at school committee, do people, GAA for example, go through Parks and Rec for field use? Would Parks and Rec take over West Street fields when school is turned back to town? She says, yes, they go through the Parks Committee for field use. As of Friday, the Parks Committee is drafting a letter claiming temporary ownership of the fields at West Street until a final decision is made on the property by the Select Board. That's the official answer.
Okay, so,
So I think
Do they
that's
have the
saying,
authority to do that, though?
Right,
If
that's-
it's,
so-
they don't have the authority to do that.
so remember we had this conversation and some of us checked the law. the property belongs to the schools until it's turned over to the town. So they can't really claim, I mean, anybody then could go
Yeah,
and claim ownership
exactly.
of any property. But that's understood, that means there's some urgency around it. I'm wondering if we can separately release the fields and not the buildings.
We can call Chris.
Yeah, let's
Or
just
Fred.
look at it that way.
I'm wondering if that, it sounds like maybe that conversation has been happening, because the Parks and Rec meets once a month also, so, or I think they're pretty regular and probably picked up for them now, because everything's getting ready to start, trying to get all the fields squared away, so maybe there's been separate conversations.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least my amateur reading of the law says that the property until it's turned over to the town belongs
Right.
to
Yeah.
the school.
Because
so,
we still carry
yeah.
the insurance,
Yeah,
we still
yeah.
carry.
And that's
And
that's
the
the thing. And it's not
liability-
like we don't want
the
people to
liability,
use the
right.
property.
Yeah.
If there's if anything happens, it's
Right.
still school property.
Yeah.
Then you know.
And the other thing is, I mean, we have to be, that school building, there's, the power is not what it had been in the past. I mean, there's a lot of things that have changed since we haven't been occupying it
Yeah.
since June, so.
And basketball, we're talking about.
I think
It's
this is
inside in the
probably
gym?
for soccer.
Soccer.
Okay, soccer is outside.
I
so
said for fields, nothing for the inside. Because they stopped using
if we
West
can
Street.
find out whether we can split them and
Can
have
you find
two.
out when they want to start practices on the field? Because
For
if it's after.
GAA?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
GAA.
That's a separate person.
Okay, well,
Or for what she's talking about.
yeah. When do they want to start
I know, because my daughter
practices
plays
on the field?
soccer,
Yeah.
and I know all soccer practices are supposed to be starting towards the end of August.
So that's why I wasn't in a, that was my understanding as well, is that August 20th was it gave us enough time to get out of the building, to make sure that we had all of the pickups of the technology equipment. God forbid that truck doesn't come tomorrow, it might have to come the next week. I mean, the 20th, I felt was mid-August and gave the fields, people who were organizing the fields enough time to get soccer practices up and running. Because they will not have access to the buildings the way they have.
So are you saying that there is a likelihood that the building may be vacated before then, before August 20th, or is that when the truck is coming and everything is
The
happening?
truck is coming Wednesday, this Wednesday. Yep.
And if everything goes well and the truck shows up, this Wednesday being the 9th? 8th, we may be out.
We could do a final walkthrough.
So can you please ask Fred what the language would be for us to, if something goes wrong, to say August 20th would be it, but everything goes well, we may be able to release the property sooner than that.
So what I'm hearing the school committee say is that if the superintendent with the building principal, facilities manager, and technology director deem that the building can be vacated, we can vacate anytime up to the 20th.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm asking her about the fields, when they're being requested for, and if it's outside only for West Street. West Street only. I don't care about the
Yep.
other ones.
So up to the 20th, I think that's what we already discussed anyway. We said a little more definitively on the 20th.
But
Up to the 20th, so how will we, so if this week we may just say we're turning it over to you? Do you have enough time to walk through? Probably that day you would do the walkthrough, right?
we'll have to walk through Thursday.
Okay.
You're here Thursday.
Mhm.
Yep.
Did we vote on the lunch services contract?
No, we
Or
did not yet.
We got
digress?
to,
Okay.
I thought we were done, so I digressed because
Yeah.
I wanted to.
And we're not gonna vote on the contract, we don't have the
No,
contract.
do we need
Oh,
to
yeah.
vote on you signing
Yes.
the
Yep,
contract?
we're gonna need to vote on that
Okay.
one, so
We can
let's
go
just
back
do
and
that
forth.
first and let's go back to this one because we already have a decision voted on that we have to change that. Okay, thank you, Deanne, for that. Does anybody else have any questions on the lunch services? So long as the contract is updated as we requested,
Mhm.
we're good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the contract that I will sign on behalf of the school committee, provided those two items are updated in the contract?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Alright, thank you. Any final questions, comments? Alright, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Alright, now going back to the decision that we had made.
It seems as though if it's ready before the 20th and other folks are vying for it, up to the 20th seems reasonable to me.
Mhm.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
There's just
So-
a lot of moving parts at the end that we
Yeah.
just wanna make
Right.
sure that we have
And-
everything out of
Okay.
that building that we need to, because it is the towns at that point.
She said the fields are only being requested for kindergarten, soccer ball, and t-ball. We'd love to have a gym, but we know it's a long shot. And, cause they weren't even able to use West Street last year. We're trying to eliminate, like, the school's not there. So I know that caused some hiccups, cause East Meadow was out also.
And did she say what is this beginning practice?
No. She's gonna hate me, I'm gonna owe her a drink.
Okay, so now going back, is there an amendment to the motion then to make it up to release the fields, provided we have everything in place, up to August 20th?
Up to August 20th.
Okay, is there a second with that amendment?
A second.
Okay, all in favor to approve the amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so I'll let the select board know that hopefully by Thursday we should be out. If not, we may have to be there till the 20th if there's still equipment in there that we need to move and all that. Okay. And of course, I would prefer that this conversation took place already. So, I have to thank Brian that he called and said, hey, what's going on with that? Because we were going with our own schedule and did not know the urgency around the fields and all that. So, but all that said, now moving on to our budget FY18 and FY19.
Yes, so in that folder, you guys have a couple different memos. One is regarding the FY18 budget and where we stand right now. And currently, we will have about a carryover of $106,000 or so from FY18 funds that we can carry over. So there's already been some discussion on what we're gonna do with that. And I just want to caution everybody that is a projection, right? So that's not down to the penny. That includes some outstanding purchase orders that are still encumbered that we are hopeful will be fully expensed. If they're not fully expensed and we have to liquidate, that will obviously add to our surplus. But as it stands right now, it's about $106,000 that we'd be carrying over from FY18.
Okay. Any questions on that? So, the $106,000 that we're going to be carrying over, but the last, actually, it's not even the last. Several meetings ago, when we at the end of the school year reported on the budget, there were a lot of items that had to move from circuit breaker back to the local budget because some of the payments were made out of the local budget. There was some confusion as far as what is moving, why they're moving, including this amount that we're looking at. What constitutes this $106,000 that we're looking at, and whether or not any payments were made forward and all those conversations that we were looking forward to. If we don't have the details, I asked Adam before this meeting, so we cannot have that conversation right now. And I personally feel that it is important for us to be able to have that conversation before it's too late. And that, unfortunately, would mean a special meeting, hopefully a short one, only for Adam to share. And I'm going to sit down with Adam to make sure that the format and everything is quick enough for us to review. But I would like the school committee to look at those, ask questions, then we decide what we do with these funds. And the circuit breaker and the payments for next year that could determine a variety of things. Where they can be used, how we present it to our joint committees, finance committee and the select board, whether or not part of it, goes back to town type of conversation, all that, I would like to bring it to the school committee first, then we can go back to the finance committee and the select board and have the same conversation. Does it sound like an idea?
But we can't do that until after the audit.
Actually, that's a question I asked
Yeah.
Adam as
Yeah.
well, and he said that I'll just let you.
Okay,
answer
so everyone's good on FY18. We're already in discussions on how we're gonna handle that, and obviously everyone will be kept up to date. So, in regards to the audit, there's also a memo in there regarding the audit. The auditor was out on vacation and now on to another job. So the last correspondence that we had from him was on July 30th. And there's a couple things still left to do before wrapping up that audit. One is making sure the town posts all of their receipts for June of 2018, and making sure the town and the school department post all the warrants that include FY18 payments in them. That, hopefully the last warrant will be 2 weeks or next week, because we just did a warrant last week. Next week. And then we should, I would assume, have something by the end of August. But we're still waiting on 2 things from the town and then from us before we can wrap that up. But the audit is really only making sure that our books are aligning with the town's books up until the point I started, to kind of give us a clean starting point as of July 1. That shouldn't have an impact on the discussion of what we're carrying over from FY18 to FY19. Shouldn't. I don't know how that's going to go, but it shouldn't.
That being the most important word, shouldn't. And that's
Exactly.
that's what
Yep.
I'm concerned about, because
Yep.
we already know, we're already seeing this $106,000 that wasn't there, right? And there's some
So one of the, I think, I don't want to say comforting things, because it's never comforting for an audit, but we asked for this audit, right? So I don't think this is kind of, oh, got you on this type of audit. It's more of a, let's just make sure up until June 30th of 2018, the school and the town reconcile on everything. I don't think there's going to be formal findings and things like that. I think it's strictly financial, make sure our books align, and then July 1 of 2018, we start over.
And if there are not, we ask that we know about that. I mean, that was the whole point.
Exactly,
that,
right, exactly.
If they're not,
Right.
they're not. Then we have to understand
Right.
why they are not.
Right.
Yeah, and to me, it feels like we need to have all of the information before we sit down as a committee and have the discussion. We need to know what the facts and figures are and what the narrative is before we sit down and say, okay, now what? Because I don't want to have this discussion and then 2 weeks after that, somebody say, oh, by the way, at the audit, this came up and that came up, because, we've already been down that road many, many times before. So it seems to me like another couple of weeks makes sense.
I can go either way.
Yeah.
My understanding is that because the audit is indeed that reconciliation of the 2 books, town and schools, that's all we're going to find out. And there may be some discrepancy there as well, and we can talk about that. But whatever came out of our own books should hopefully be clear to us, and the numbers that we're talking about are based on that. But I hear what you're saying, and it may provide one additional layer of information for us to evaluate, make a decision on any one of these.
Or at the very least, an additional layer of confidence that what we're discussing is 100% accurate.
Well, that's
Yeah.
my question. Are we gonna be at a point where we're confident we know how that happened? Like every step of it?
How that surplus happened?
Yeah.
I mean, I can be confident in knowing the numbers that are in front of me. Yes, I mean, I can dig as deep as we want. I mean, there's a couple big numbers that are there that contributed to that surplus. Again, in my opinion, do we want to waste a lot of time going back? I mean, the projection that I built is a pretty good projection. We can dig down really into those numbers. I'm not sure if that's gonna solve anything. But yeah, I can pinpoint those numbers. How those numbers came to be, that I don't that I wouldn't really know.
Well, that's the piece, if we're going back to the town
Mhm.
with offering up, you know, we wanna return some funds to the town, we need to have an ample
Yeah, the who, the why.
narrative, exactly, cause those are gonna be the questions that
Right,
are
right,
asked
and
of us.
yes,
That we
and
will
we
have.
will. We certainly
That we'll
will.
have that, yeah.
We certainly will. Yes, we certainly will.
So let's just, I know we're gonna have this conversation, I think it's important for
Mhm.
us to have an extended conversation on this, and what we're seeing doesn't cover some of the moves of funds because they were really spent out of, you know, the wrong buckets, then the circuit breaker based forward payments and all that, we have to really make all that clear, so then
Mhm.
the numbers will be different and we have to discuss that. But if we want to remind ourselves the chronology of this whole thing, I think in March or so, as this is based on what you told us, so in March or so, there was this concern that we were going to have a deficit at the end of the year. Based on that, there was an additional, well, on top of the freeze, there was a request from each department to see if they could just come up with some funds so we would not end up with that. We come to our June meeting.
Late May, early June.
Yeah, June meeting, we find out that, oh, now just, you know, we potentially have the surplus. And then the surplus now, you know, it means the funds were expensed from this bucket versus that bucket, and that's causing some confusion. And there is some forward payment of funds, which gets very confusing. So because that narrative changed so quickly from March to June, and you know, even from June to July, the magnitude of payments and everything changed. Even though I'm kind of dying to just have this conversation and find out what it is, what is not, one side of my brain says, will anything possibly change so that whatever story we come up with will not be the story we will have to share with the finance committee, select board, and then the town eventually, if we're gonna end up returning funds. So that's why I'm saying I hear you. Then we can wait until the audit is finalized and have those numbers with us too, and have the conversation then.
I think because the story's been changing, I feel like we need to have the audit and have
Yeah.
everything closed, everything looked at, everything
Right.
encumbered, every receipt processed. So we're actually looking at a true
Signed off on,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know, this is
signed,
it.
sealed, and delivered. This
Yeah.
is where we're at. This is what we spent. This is how we did it. This is where everything came out of. These are all the funds that were used. These are all the GL codes, like everything, so that when we're looking at it, we really have a true picture. And then from there, we can start doing, like you're
Yeah.
saying, itemizing everything out so that it makes sense to us, and we can have the conversation based on real things, and
Just saying, it's gotta be fully transparent, that's all.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is, and I think that is the biggest driver of my kind of hurry or impatience to just get to a point where we can understand the story and tell the story and do whatever we need to do. But I don't want anybody to just have the impression that, hey, there is this conversation, but what is it, what it's not, how come it's taking so long? We're talking about early June when we heard that there is going to be some additional funds left. Now we're getting close to the new school year. I think we can hopefully explain it clearly that we were waiting for all these pieces of information to come together.
And I don't
there's no
feel
problem with that.
confident at all. I am very confused and I don't feel confident myself, so
I agree.
I don't think I can explain it to anybody else until, again, we can confidently say the audit's closed, the books are closed, and this is where we're at.
Here's what it is. Okay, that's fair. I like that. Everybody's good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we need to vote?
No.
Okay.
So then, right now, I guess it's just waiting
Yeah,
for.
and I'd have to wait anyway because we still have 2 more payrolls that would use FY18 funds.
Okay.
And we still have another warrant to close out FY18.
Are
So-
these weekly warrants or bi-weekly?
So this would be the next warrant would be bi-weekly, so it would be next Monday, Tuesday would be that last warrant most likely for FY18.
So let me ask it this way.
Yep.
For your purposes, when are you closing your books? Is it when that warrant is done?
When that warrant is complete and when we make the last summer payroll for FY18. So that would be we get paid this Friday, the next bi-weekly after that. Should encumber all of FY18 funds.
So the auditor said that they would wait for all that to happen, so we're reconciled with the town for FY18.
Yep, so they really, the warrant next week, they still need to wait on, and they still need to wait on Chris posting those June 2018 receipts. So over the next 2 or 3 weeks anyway, I'm still gonna need that time to reconcile everything.
So that's around the 24th.
That's around the end of this month,
Yeah.
correct?
Okay, so
Yep.
I think, again, we're still, we might be rolling into the next school year, or early into the next school year, but
And that's common.
Yes.
That's common.
Alright,
That's common.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my last question, wasn't Mark working on making sure that the towns and the schools' ledger lines were all, I guess in sync right up until October of last year? I feel like he kept saying through August and September that he had a lot of work to do with Chris Martin on making sure that their ledger numbers lined up with our ledger numbers and everything was in sync. Does that ring a bell to anybody?
So let me ask you, since you mentioned transparency, based on what I'm understanding, is it fair to say that the monthly reconciliations did not happen?
They did not happen.
So we don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Right.
And that's why we asked for an audit. That's
Right.
why we wanted that to
Correct.
start before or at the same time
Right.
Adam came in. And that's why we asked Adam to look at all that so that we are, he is involved in that reconciliation, but also we have this independent auditor who will tell us whether or not that reconciliation has happened
Okay, so
or
you're
is
doing a
happening.
reconciliation now that I was just talking about.
So-
To a degree. Okay.
Watch what I say here. I sat down with Chris and Steve Nally in the first couple weeks that I got here, kind of discussed where the source of miscommunication and things were, and agreed with them at the least we would sit down on a monthly basis to go over those reconciliations.
Okay, that's good news.
It's good.
And that's where that conversation ended.
And I think that's a great conversation,
Yeah.
if I'm not misunderstanding, because that was the frequency of the reports that we were receiving from the town anyway, was monthly.
Yep.
And the expectation was that when we received those, the work was going to be, are these reflecting whatever we are seeing on our side? So before we even get to the next month, the previous month's payments, if there's any gap, there is gap. If there is, if everything is on the same page, we're on the same page. It seems that we never had that conversation, so.
And I think it would be helpful to have the expectation set by more than just Adam and myself for that monthly
Yeah.
meeting. Because,
There's still in the 2 months that I've been here, there's still a big disconnect between the two departments.
Yeah, I mean, and
We're
it's
well
unfortunate.
aware of that.
It's something we've been talking about, but it is something that we're working on, hopefully, on both sides.
Just-
So, yeah.
My thing is just kind of be patient. Just know that I'm doing my best to try to mend that relationship and build a new one. And there's still some
Yeah.
lack of communication and
So is
Yeah.
there something that we can do on our end that would help facilitate that?
I mean, we're going to have these conversations. Even the other day at our Granby Development Steering
Yeah.
Committee meeting.
That's what I was thinking
Yeah.
too. We can have more informal because we have
Granby
members
goes.
from the finance committee
I don't know yet. Probably a little
and select
farther
board.
out.
So yeah, we can do it in a more informal way.
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
know if
But
you
Jay
wanted
was asking if,
anything.
we're having these, is it possible for us to have these conversations quarterly? And I said, that's exactly the intent. In fact, we have a calendar that
Yeah.
says quarterly. So it's already on our calendars to do that. But to the extent that we start having those routine conversations, when, those monthly town files come to you and you have those conversations, the relationship will get better
Mhm.
gradually when those things happen.
Mhm.
When we only pay lip services to a good relationship and those things that we promised don't happen,
Mhm.
it is only understandable that there will be some concern, and the relationship will be very fragile. So I appreciate that you're saying it that way. There
Mhm.
is still a disconnect, and we all know it, I
Right.
guess,
Yep.
on all sides. But also, we all know that we want to make sure that we find the right way to improve that, and going forward, make it like clockwork.
Yep.
Everything is
Mhm.
working as intended.
Mhm.
So.
So I'm sorry, but
No.
that stuff you're hearing a little wrong.
Yeah.
When you say reconcile for June 30th with the town
Yep.
in the next couple of weeks, that will be clean, right? There's gonna be.
Okay, so whether Mark had done it or not, what the audit is going to do is going to catch us up through June 30th of 2018 for reconciliation. Whether Mark did that or not, I'm not sure. The auditor will provide us with that. It is now my task from July going forward to meet with the town to reconcile on a monthly basis.
Okay, that was the part I think that
Yeah.
Mark was taken through mid-September to early October last year, is that final reconciliation of June 30th. And that was the piece I was concerned about, is
Yep.
getting final closure to anything else.
Yeah.
So after June 30th, when the fiscal year ends, there are still payments that belong to FY18. You probably know this, and I'm just so because those payments happen.
And they take a while to, they
Exactly.
take a while, 2 or 3 months to
Yeah.
kind of everything pan out.
That's why we go all the way into September.
Yeah.
To say, okay, now we have all the payments done, and on both
Mhm.
sides, the town and the schools, we are seeing the same things,
Mhm.
and we. But this year, at least we will know through the audit that through June 30th, that reconciliation or whatever gaps may exist, we will know about those,
Mhm.
and then we will take that and look at what transactions happened from July 1st through whenever we close the
Yep.
books,
Yep.
and make sure that everything is reflecting the same numbers.
In my experience in other districts, going in front of the town or city to request carryover usually doesn't happen until October anyway, because there's such a long time to make sure everything
Yeah.
reconciles, payments have been made, all that. So getting them a firm number in the next 2 or 3 weeks is not going to do anything but kind of hurt us and hold us to that number. So if we can let the audit pan out and everything else pan out, we'll be in a better situation.
So then can we put on the next school committee meeting agenda to catch us up on where we're at, so we know where
Yeah.
we're at in the audit? Is the audit complete?
Mm-hmm.
You know, where we, just
Mhm.
so we don't have to ask, so we know where we're at. I think that would be really helpful.
That's you.
Yeah, and my plan going forward, and I know as we kind of transition from last year into this year, my plan going forward would be to just kind of report out on anything fiscal in the second meeting of the month for school committee. I understand now as we go along, every meeting there might be a need to report out on it, but I would say as we get into this, the second meeting of the month would be the financial update for the committee.
Yeah, that works. I think it's just with this and the situation that we're finding ourselves in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Honestly, this helps us. This helps everybody having this frequency.
Yeah.
And again, going back to your transparency comment, I completely agreed with that, and that allows us to be a lot more transparent in front of the camera as well. So people who watch these meetings, they can be informed as well. Because sometimes even we don't understand what
Mm-hmm.
when you explain it in the way that everybody can understand, us and everybody else, so we're all on the same page too. That's exactly what I'm hoping from the future upcoming transparency.
John, I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure I understood what to expect over the next few weeks.
Yeah, no, and like I said, if we need to obviously address financial stuff until October every meeting, that's fine. I'm just saying what my plan is. Hopefully everything gets calms down, and we'll.
And then we're gonna start FY20.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, moving on?
Yeah.
You ready to move on
How about
here?
FY?
Yeah. So
19.
lastly, on my part anyway, there's a memo there for FY19. That's FY18. And this is really we're only about a month or so, well, actually 2 months into FY19. So all it is just a real quick overview of what we spent to date, and in comparison to our overall budget. Now, this might be a good time to have the conversation of how, when I present every second meeting of the month on the budget update, how you guys would like to see that. I can break it down essentially any way you guys would like. So,
When we sit down this week,
yeah, okay, so
let's just see if we can come up
Yep.
with a format, then we can
Mhm.
present it to the school committee. Okay.
Awesome. So, again, I
In
didn't,
fact,
Wasn't that supposed to be part of the budget subcommittee? Because I'd like to be part of that.
yeah, I was actually trying to exclude you.
yeah.
but, I just remembered about the subcommittee.
Yep.
So let's just talk, and
Okay.
whenever we have time, let's just meet
Yeah.
with you
Okay.
together.
Again, in my mind, the budget subcommittee is really to build the next year's budget, but I understand the times that we're in now, we can use that meeting to
Yes.
to do this detailed work, and then we can report out to the full
Yep.
committee
Yep.
on what we talk about. So that's fine. So
Sounds
the
good.
FY19 memo is more just we're 6 weeks in or so. This is what we spent. One good thing is that the governor signed the final budget, and we got about a 52,000 or so increase in our funding. It's really minimal, but
So that's a good point.
yes,
The
We'll take it.
updated
Yes.
budget.
yep.
When are we going to vote to approve the updated budget?
So we could put that on the next the
Okay.
27th
'Cause
agenda.
we
Yeah.
finally got the federal grants as well. So
So
the
you're gonna
federal
have all
grants
the
were
pieces,
finally
okay.
updated.
Yep.
Yep.
So
we'll
I'll have an all
those-
funds budget amount
Yeah.
for the 27th.
So the way this works, but budget is basically our estimate
Mhm.
based on what we know,
Mhm.
including the funds coming from the state, because the state at their last review of how much they should spend on education, they increased the funds slightly, but they did.
Yep.
We have to increase the budget by that amount for the state funded part of it.
Okay.
So the total will change, and we have to approve or reapprove the updated numbers now.
Mhm.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. Any question?
Fabulous.
All right.
Next. My stomach is going to be hurt on camera soon.
That's it, isn't it?
Upcoming business.
Food service contract, didn't we already talk about that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Alright, so
them.
CCD and GA.
Well, we're not gonna sign the contracts today? That was just for our information?
Myself?
Me?
No, Adam, you didn't talk about signing it
Yeah, no.
So we don't need them now, or?
We'll get them to you on the 27th.
Okay, we don't, I mean, if they don't need it by the 27th, that's fine, I just don't
Yeah,
want
it'll
to
be
delay
fine.
things.
They don't start until.
because
Okay.
we'd like to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beforehand.
Yes.
We'll put
Yep.
them in for the next meeting.
Alright, I sent you some feedback,
You
were you
did,
able
but
to?
so for GAA, the question was, would it be high school only? They actually do use East Meadow, and have been using East Meadow,
Well,
gym.
Again, we mean different things by East Meadow now.
Right.
So are they using one side of the building or
Okay.
the entire building?
So GAA
Yes.
is for the basketball.
Yeah.
So they would still continue to use. Let me go where you were.
Oh,
You
okay.
were with
All right.
Immaculate Heart of Mary.
I was
so,
with Immaculate Heart of Mary, yes.
We
what
use-
I'd
we've
like
been
to
using the new
propose is
part.
that we do a walkthrough with Bill and Immaculate Heart of Mary to define what parts of the building would be used, and then put that into the contract.
Okay, that would be
Okay.
great.
I know my kids go to the CCD, so I know while everything was under construction, we used the front part of the building. We used like what would be the little kid rooms, that wing, and it seemed to work okay.
Right.
And there was always a general like session in the cafeteria.
Right.
So,
So I just want to walk through and make sure that that's adequate.
Yeah.
Because they do service a range of age groups.
yeah,
so-
pre-K to 12, pre-K to grade 11.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then GAA, it's not high school only, they do use the East Meadow gym. They did not use, as you stated, they did not use West Street this year, but, so, GAA, I know that Bill's been working with them to try and help all the coaches understand, you know, how to use the gym, you know, how to have the kids wipe their feet, all of that stuff, so that the gym stays
Nice.
in really outstanding condition. So
So do we need to see a SOAR one too?
SOAR, right? So SOAR did send me a memorandum, and I will have that for you on the 27th as well.
Okay. All right. On the GAA one, I was asking about the dates, or was it the
You
last?
were asking
yeah.
about could it be high school, and it's not just high school only. I have your email right here.
Oh, okay. So actually, yes, two things.
Yep.
One of them, I was trying to clarify whether it was high school only because
It's
no
not.
school was mentioned,
Right,
and only one sentence said high school in it.
at the
So
end.
we should
yeah.
make sure that it's
Sure.
clear because you know, two different gyms, two different types of needs, custodians, and all that stuff. And on one of them, there was an old date.
Okay.
It was saying 2017, and it was highlighted. I'm assuming somebody, you know, wanted to update it, but it was saying 2017.
That has to be updated. No, nothing was updated as far as. the-
Because you were not expecting approval today anyway. Okay, so, all right, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. Cool. All right, anything else before God? Anything else we should include in our next meeting? And we're still good with our August 27th date. No other meeting is needed. We will talk about when we can meet Adam for the Budget Finance Subcommittee. Okay, with that, if there is nothing else, do we have an executive? We don't have an executive session. Good. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
We gotta say.